Chapter 401. And Yu was the head of the family and the pillar of the family. He supported the entire general's residence and protected the family. However, when it came to Mingzhu, and Yu even wanted to abandon the family in his responsibilities, causing his status in the family to rapidly decline. Now, and Yu did not approve of Yu marrying the Li family's widowed daughter, but his opposition did not cause any waves. No one took his words to heart. And Yu seemed to have realized it as well. He frowned tightly and felt very uncomfortable. After agreeing on the date, Yu was ready to go to the Li residence to propose marriage. When Ning Shu saw Yu riding on the back of a horse, her posture was valiant and incomparably handsome, she suddenly felt a sense of pride that her own child had grown up. Yu looked at his son and suddenly felt that he was very unfamiliar with him. He often went to war, and everything at home was taken care of by Wei Lingxian. In a trance, his son and daughter were already at the age to start a family. Yu wanted to give Yu a few words of advice, but he did not know what to say. Lingyun told her brother that the marriage proposal must go smoothly and he must marry his future sister-in-law. Yu laughed heartily and cupped his fists to his family. "Grandson, your son will definitely succeed." The old madam smiled happily, and Ning Shu also had a smile on his face. This kind of life was very blissful. Yu stood together with Mingzhu and felt like an outsider. They were clearly his family, but he felt that there was no relationship between them. An unprecedented loneliness welled up in Yu's heart. Mingzhu looked at the tall Yu, her eyes sparkling. The marriage proposal process went smoothly. After accepting the bride, asking for her name, accepting the bride's 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 name, and inviting the bride's name. The two families quickly set a date for the marriage half a month later. Soon, the day of the marriage arrived. The general's residence was bustling with noise and excitement. Bright red lanterns were hung up. Lingyun had a smile on her face as she ordered the servants to do things. Even the old madam came to help. Yu was wearing a bright red bridegroom's outfit, an official's hat, and a red string hanging from her shoulders. She looked very jubilant. Ning Shu looked very satisfied and nodded. She was very handsome. Compared to the hustle and bustle of the general's residence, Mingzhu's courtyard was much quieter. Mingzhu leaned against the door, her hand holding onto a servant girl's hand. Looking at the busy people, she felt like an outsider. "Miss, do you want to go in? The wind is strong at the entrance." Mingzhu's personal maid said to Mingzhu. Mingzhu saw Yu, who was dressed in a wedding gown, walking down the corridor. He looked healthy and handsome, his entire body was filled with joy, and he was beaming with joy. Mingzhu suddenly realized that she and Yu did not go through any ceremony when they got married. Especially when she saw the bride and groom holding the bouquet in one hand, under the cheers and laughter of the crowd, Mingzhu's heart suddenly felt like it was being hammered. She did not have a wedding, no dowry, no brothers to carry her on their backs, no 10 miles of red dowry, no big red bridal sedan, nothing. Hearing the sound of the ceremony, Mingzhu felt that her life was not worth it. What did she want? She did not have anything. Yu did not give her anything. Yu said that he loved her, but she did not get anything in return. Mingzhu looked at the bride with the veil on her head, and there were poisonous thorns in her heart that pierced her heart. Jealousy, unwillingness, she looked at Yu and Wei Lingxian sitting together, accepting the bows of the newlyweds. She did not even have the chance to stand side by side with Yu. They were the happy family. Especially when she saw the smile on Wei Lingxian's face, an indescribable pain surged in Mingzhu's heart. Everyone was happy, but Mingzhu's bitter face ruined the atmosphere. When the old madam saw Mingzhu like this, she directly told her to go back to the courtyard. Who was she trying to show this to? Mingzhu, who was chased away, felt even more wronged. It was as if she was being bullied. She looked at Yu, who was drinking with someone else and did not notice her at all. The liveliness here did not belong to Gage. She could not feel this kind of liveliness. Ning Shu smiled and talked to the other madams. From the corner of his eye, he saw Ming Zhu's lonely expression. Ming Zhu should now understand that her and Yu's love did not receive anyone's blessings. Everything was just her imagination. Ming Zhu's current status could not even be considered a concubine because it was not on the family tree. She should have been a concubine, but because they did not serve tea, the old madam did not care about Ming Zhu. Naturally, she would not be kind enough to mention the family tree. Therefore, it was easy to fall in love, but it was not easy to stay in love. In the end, Yu and Ming Zhu both died and became true love. Looking at Yu, this body felt gratified. It was obvious that he was happy to see his son start a family and marry a good wife. After a lively day, the general's residence quieted down. Ming Zhu and Yu lay together. Ming Zhu asked Yu, there is no such wedding between us. Yu hugged Ming Zhu. When your child is born, I'll hold one for you. An indescribable anger and exhaustion suddenly surged in Ming Zhu's heart. She turned her back to Yu. Yu hugged Ming Zhu and comforted her, Ming Zhu, you're pregnant now. Don't think too much. It's not good for your health. Ming Zhu was very angry, but she could not explain why she was angry. After a while, Ming Zhu turned around and saw that Yu had fallen asleep. Yu was getting married today. As Yu's father, he naturally had to deal with the guests. If it was in the past, Yu would definitely comfort Ming Zhu, but he was too tired today, so he fell asleep first. However, Ming Zhu's suppressed emotions suddenly exploded at this moment. It turned out that she was so aggrieved and uncomfortable. The current Ming Zhu could not even deceive herself. Yu was everything in her life, but Ming Zhu realized that she was not everything in Yu's life. This made Ming Zhu angry, unwilling, and vaguely regretful. Wake up, Yu, wake up. Ming Zhu slapped Yu's face. Yu opened his eyes and held Ming Zhu's hand. He felt a burning sensation on his face. His skin seemed to have been scratched by Ming Zhu's nails. What are you doing? Ming Zhu, what's wrong with you? Yu's face was filled with anger. No one would be in a good mood after being hit all of a sudden. When Ming Zhu saw that Yu was so fierce to her, tears immediately fell. She cried loudly, Yu, you actually yelled at me. How can you treat me like this? Yu reached out and hugged Ming Zhu in his arms. He comforted her tiredly, do you feel uncomfortable? Don't cry. My heart is going to break when you cry. Ming Zhu leaned on Yu's body. When she smelled the medicine on Yu's body, she immediately felt like vomiting. However, Yu hugged her tightly. The thick smell of medicine at the tip of her nose caused Ming Zhu's stomach to churn. She pushed Yu away and threw up by the bed. Chapter 402. Ming Zhu's vomit filled the entire room with a sour smell. Yu wrinkled his nose and looked at Ming Zhu, who was lying on the edge of the bed and vomiting. Yu felt that something in his heart had been destroyed. In Yu's heart, Ming Zhu was a gentle and poetic person. However, Ming Zhu was vomiting filth in her mouth. Yu found it hard to accept. However, when this thought came to his mind, Yu was shocked. He loved Ming Zhu so much. How could he have such thoughts? Yu felt that he needed to organize his thoughts. He got off the bed and ran out of Ming Zhu's room in a panic. Ming Zhu just stared blankly and cried silently. Yu spent the night in the study. He stood by the window the whole night and looked at the bright moon in the sky like a piece of wood. The next day, the newlyweds met their in-laws. Ning Shu and the old lady were wearing brocade clothes and waiting for Yu and Lin Yanlei. What surprised Ning Shu was that Yu came over very early today. His complexion was very ugly, and there were dark circles under his eyes. His face was sallow, and his expression was extremely ugly. Why wasn't Yu with Ming Zhu? Weren't the two of them conjoined twins? Ning Shu was curious, but he looked dignified and virtuous on the surface. After a while, Ming Zhu also came over. She held her waist and walked in. Her face was extremely pale, so pale that the veins on her forehead were showing. The old lady saw Ming Zhu's weak appearance and her face was pale. She quickly asked, "What's wrong with you? Did you not rest well?" Ming Zhu glanced at Yu and said to the old lady, "I'm fine. I just can't eat. I feel nauseous and want to vomit. Pregnant women are all like this. Everyone has been through this. Even if you want to vomit, you have to eat," the old lady instructed Ming Zhu. Ning Shu saw that the atmosphere between Yu and Ming Zhu was a little strange. It looked like they were quarreling. The newlyweds came in. Yu held Lin Yanlei's hand and stepped into the door. Lin Yanlei saw so many people looking at her and quickly wanted to shake Yu's hand off. However, Yu held it tightly, causing Lin Yanlei's face to turn red. Everyone responded with kind smiles. Ming Zhu looked at Lin Yanlei and suddenly felt envious. Lin Yanlei first knelt down to serve tea to the old lady. The old lady smiled and gave her a pair of bracelets that were as white as jade. They were flawless. The old lady said, "This was given to me by your grandfather. I'll pass it on to you." "Thank you, grandfather." Lin Yanlei had a smile on her face. She looked very happy. Then, it was Yu's turn. Yu gave him a red packet. Lin Yanlei brought a cup of tea to Ning Shu and called her mother. Ning Shu's face was amiable, but she was crying in her heart. Was she going to become a grandmother soon? It felt so complicated. Ning Shu gave Lin Yanlei a thick red packet and a pair of dragon and phoenix bracelets. Next was Ming Zhu. Ming Zhu didn't expect Lin Yanlei to serve her tea. Everyone else was kneeling, but Lin Yanlei was half squatting in front of Ming Zhu. She knew that Lin Yanlei was polite. Ming Zhu hurriedly took the teacup and took a sip. She looked even more nervous than Lin Yanlei, the newlywed. After drinking tea, she naturally had to give a gift. Ming Zhu took a hairpin from her head and gave it to Lin Yanlei. Lin Yanlei took the hairpin and pursed her lips. She said, "Thank you, auntie." Seeing Ming Zhu like this, the old lady rubbed her forehead. Yu saw Ming Zhu's nervous and helpless appearance. His heart ached. He walked over and sat beside Ming Zhu as if he wanted to lean on her. When Ning Shu saw this, he only smiled faintly. The general's residence already had a daughter-in-law. Under Ning Shu's suggestion, Ling Yun gave the authority of the housekeeper to Lin Yanlei. Lin Yanlei didn't expect that she would be in charge of the general's residence as soon as she got married. She felt uneasy and wanted to return the authority to Ning Shu. "Mother, your daughter-in-law just got married. It's not appropriate," Lin Yanlei said respectfully. Ning Shu looked at Lin Yanlei. She was a dignified and elegant woman. She had a determined look on her face. After all, she lost her mother when she was young and had to take care of her younger brother. She was younger than Ming Zhu, but she was much more intelligent than Ming Zhu. Ning Shu smiled and said, "You are already a member of the general's residence. These things were originally your responsibility. Don't worry, don't worry." Lin Yanlei was relieved. She was much more considerate than Ling Yun. Ning Shu let Ling Yun learn from Lin Yanlei. The sisters-in-law got along very well. Yu seemed to like Lin Yanlei very much. She even delayed the date of her return to the Lizhou army. The two of them were in harmony. Although there was still some politeness between them, there was sweetness in their interactions. There was no vigor, only the warmth of a trickle of water. If Ning Shu had to choose, she would rather choose this kind of slow and steady relationship. Like Ming Zhu and Yu's fiery relationship, what would be left after it burned? The love between Yu and Lin Yanlei gave Ming Zhu an indescribable feeling. Ming Zhu often saw Yu pick a flower from the garden and put it in Lin Yanlei's hair while she was reading the account book. An Yu's shoulder was placed on Lin Yanlei's, and the two of them looked at each other and smiled. It looked exceptionally beautiful. An Yu had never done any of these things for her. Ming Zhu held her waist and couldn't help but walk towards the two of them in the pavilion. They were so happy. Ming Zhu walked into the pavilion and saw the petite Lin Yanlei almost embedded in An Yu's embrace. An Yu's body was strong and strong. She really wanted to know what it felt like to be in his embrace. Aunt. Lin Yanlei bowed towards Ming Zhu. Ming Zhu looked at Lin Yanlei in a daze. This woman was beautiful and dignified. When she stood together with An Yu, they were a perfect match. An elegant young man and a beautiful young woman. It was like a painting. Ming Zhu looked at the two of them. There was an indescribable jealousy in her heart. Because An Yu's young body was tall and broad. She didn't dare to get close to An Yu. The smell of medicine on his body was strong. As long as she got close to him, she would feel disgusted. Now, An Yu's body didn't have the vigorous smell of a man, but the smell of an old man in his twilight years. And it was mixed with the smell of medicine. Ming Zhu didn't know why An Yu kept drinking medicine. Lin Yanlei saw Ming Zhu looking at her and An Yu strangely. An Yu frowned and said, "Aunt, Yanlei and I will leave first." Saying that, she pulled Lin Yanlei away. Ming Zhu looked at the two of them and narrowed her eyes as they walked away. "An Yu, don't you feel that aunt is very strange?" Lin Yanlei frowned and said to An Yu. A woman's intuition was very sharp. Lin Yanlei felt that Ming Zhu had a faint hostility towards her. Lin Yanlei couldn't understand why this aunt was hostile towards her. An Yu didn't care and said, "Don't mind her. When you meet her in the future, just follow the etiquette." Lin Yanlei smiled and looked at An Yu gently. Chapter 403. Has the general been sleeping in the study recently? Zhu, who was beside Ning Shu, asked. Zhu, helped Ning Shu wash up as she said, "Yes, he has been sleeping in the study for the past few days." Naturally, she was not as clingy as before. However, what Ning Shu did not expect was that Ming Zhu did not make a fuss. An Yu slept in the study while Ming Zhu continued to live her own life. Ming Zhu was the kind of person who would not be able to stand being ignored. However, this made Ning Shu very surprised. After washing up, Ning Shu went to eat breakfast. When he walked into the hall, Lin Yanlei had already asked the servants to set the table. Her diligent manner made Ning Shu feel a little ashamed. An Yu was blessed to have such a gentle and considerate wife. After a while, the old lady also came. Her eyes were filled with joy when she saw Lin Yanlei. She clearly liked this granddaughter-in-law. Other than An Yu and Ming Zhu, the two eye-catching people, Ning Shu felt that this family was very happy. She should be leaving this world soon. Ning Shu didn't do anything in this world because she had more important things to do. She couldn't afford to be angered by this shameless pair of adulterous couple. Every time she saw An Yu's sallow face, Ning Shu would reveal a meaningful and dignified smile. Then, when she saw Ming Zhu's bitter and regretful expression, Ning Shu revealed an even more dignified smile. Ning Shu, wahahaha, Ming Zhu was a little girl. She longed for a tall and strong man to conquer her and dominate her. However, An Yu did not seem like a dominator now. An Yu's masculinity could not be displayed. In bed, he could not conquer Ming Zhu. Perhaps in Ming Zhu's heart, An Yu's image of a god had begun to collapse. Moreover, ever since Ming Zhu became pregnant, Ning Shu had not seen any joy on her face. What made Ning Shu even more shocked was that Ming Zhu's gaze towards An Yu was very strange. Could it be that Ming Zhu had some thoughts towards An Yu? In the storyline, An Yu liked Ming Zhu, but Ming Zhu did not like An Yu. At that time, An Yu was immature and only relied on his deep feelings to love Ming Zhu. However, Ming Zhu did not like him. Could it be that because of An Yu's problem, Ming Zhu changed her target? Ning Shu shook his head. That was absolutely impossible. Ming Zhu and Yu were true lovers who could follow each other through life and death. However, the current in Yu's body was strong and powerful. She was no longer a pretty face. Her entire body was filled with an imposing aura. She indeed looked more charming than the gigolo from before. And you didn't come over for breakfast, so old Madame Fu asked someone to send the food to his study. When Ming Zhu heard that Yu did not come, her eyes flashed, she pursed her lips and drank the porridge bit by bit. Sitting opposite Ming Zhu were Yu and Lin Yanlei. Ming Zhu kept looking at them, but Ning Shu kept looking at Ming Zhu. No matter how he looked at it, there was something wrong with this pearl. Feeling that someone was looking at him, Ming Zhu turned his head and met Ning Shu's gaze. Ming Zhu immediately lowered his head to eat his porridge, he did not dare to look around anymore. After breakfast, the group of people walked out. Ming Zhu, who was walking out, suddenly tripped and fell straight to the ground. Ah! Ming Zhu held his stomach and cried out in pain. Why did you push me? Ming Zhu pointed at Lin Yanlei. Lin Yanlei, who was standing beside Ming Zhu, had a pale face. She was stunned and immediately said, I didn't push you, I didn't. Save my child, please save my child. Ming Zhu cried and shouted. Ning Shu squatted down to help Ming Zhu, but Ming Zhu brushed away Ning Shu's hand and held her stomach as if Ning Shu was going to harm her child. Mother, I really didn't push Aunt. Lin Yanlei's voice had a sobbing tone. She really did not do that. She did not know that Aunt had fallen to the ground. Bring Ming Zhu back to the courtyard first. Go find a doctor, find a doctor. Old Madame Fu used her walking stick to shout. Ming Zhu's face was pale as she shouted, I beg you, please save my child, save my child. But when Ning Shu reached out to help Ming Zhu's face was full of fear. It was as if everyone there was going to harm her. Ning Shu squinted his eyes and said to Yu, who was comforting Lin Yanlei, bring Ming Zhu back to her courtyard. As soon as he said that, Ning Shu saw the light of desire in Ming Zhu's eyes. Ning Shu's heart suddenly had a strange feeling. That's not good. And Yu shook his head. He and Ming Zhu were not of the same generation. In name, she was a concubine mother. It was not good for him to carry her. Hearing Yu's rejection, Ming Zhu's tears fell. Ning Shu saw that Ming Zhu was not bleeding. He guessed that she was fine, so he asked Zhu to call Yu over. When Yu came over, he saw his beloved lying on the ground. These people were watching from the side. He was suddenly angry. Ming Zhu is pregnant. How can you treat her like this? Yu roared and hurriedly carried Ming Zhu to the courtyard. Ning Shu sneered. The group followed into the courtyard. Ming Zhu was lying on the bed with a pale face. Yu held her hand tightly and said, our child will be fine. It will be fine. The doctor came over and said that there was nothing serious. She was just frightened and needed to rest. Ming Zhu looked at Lin Yanlei's face and asked, why did you push me? I didn't. I really didn't push you. Lin Yanlei's face was pale. She said calmly, I was on your left. If I pushed you, you should have fallen to the right. But you fell to my side. You were the one who pulled me, Ming Zhu said sadly. Ning Shu said coldly, one moment you say that someone pushed you, the next moment you say that someone pulled you. What is going on? Are you questioning Ming Zhu? Ming Zhu almost lost her child, and you still want to interrogate her like this. Do you still have any humanity? Yu said sadly. His sallow face was twisted in pain. Ning Shu, calm down. Don't be angry. Yu protected his wife behind him and confronted Yu. Yanlei would never do such a thing. Why don't you say that your concubine fell down by herself? How dare you talk to your father like this? Yu seemed to feel that his dignity was being challenged. He spoke harshly to Yu. He was like an old lion trying to maintain his dignity. He suddenly realized that there was no one standing beside him in the room. Mingzhu, who was lying on the bed, only knew how to cry. Being all alone, loneliness welled up in Yu's heart. And Yu said coldly, "I'm telling the truth. No one saw what happened clearly. My wife cannot be bullied." Mingzhu saw Yu like this and Yu who was silent. Her tears flowed even more fiercely. She did not say a word. The old lady slammed her walking stick and said, "All right, stop fooling around. Mingzhu, take care of your body. This matter will be over." Chapter 404. Because of the old madam's intervention, this matter was resolved. As for the truth of the matter, everyone probably knew the answer in their hearts. The group of people left Mingzhu's courtyard. In the house, Mingzhu looked at Yu with tears in her eyes. His figure seemed to be bent, and he looked much older. Mingzhu's mouth tasted bitter, so bitter that she wanted to vomit. "Why? Why didn't you help me? And Yu knows how to protect his wife, but what about you? We almost lost our child. How could you do this?" Mingzhu hammered Yu's chest. "Do you know how scared I was just now?" Yu's expression became even more desolate. "The child in your stomach is my child, but Yu is also my child. Mingzhu, I'm in a difficult position." Mingzhu's eyes widened, and tears trembled on her eyelashes. "Yu, how could you do this? You don't love me at all. You still think about Wei Lingxian in your heart. That's why you're so good to Wei Lingxian's child. You promised me that you would treat me well for the rest of my life. Yu, I lost my status as a princess because of you. I don't want anything. I only want you. Don't treat me like this." Mingzhu cried and shouted. Yu thought of the shocking things Mingzhu had done for him. He hugged Mingzhu and comforted her. "Mingzhu, I love you. Do you want me to dig out my heart for you to see? You're pregnant now. You always like to think too much. Mingzhu, let's move out." Yu said firmly. "Let's move out of the general's residence." Mingzhu was stunned. "You want to move out of the general's residence with me? I only have you in my heart." Yu looked at Mingzhu. Mingzhu shook her head. "Your mother won't agree. It's good that you have the heart." Mingzhu lay down, and her tears turned into a smile. Seeing that Mingzhu was so righteous, Yu was naturally happy. He kissed Mingzhu's forehead. Mingzhu smelled the bitter and unpleasant smell of medicine in Yu's mouth. "Yu, can you stop drinking medicine?" Mingzhu said. "I can't smell medicine now." "Okay." Yu thought of his body and hesitated for a moment before agreeing. On the other side, Lin Yanlei was very uneasy. Ningxu said, "Mother, I really didn't do such a thing. I have no reason to do such a thing." Ningxu smiled and said, "Of course I believe you. In the future, if we meet Mingzhu, we will take a detour." Seeing that her mother-in-law believed her, Lin Yanlei breathed a sigh of relief and told Ningxu, "Mother, I don't think Yin Yang likes me." "Of course. Maybe it's because you're happy, so she's jealous of you," Ningxu said straightforwardly. Lin Yanlei had something that Mingzhu did not. "Jealous of me? Why? Isn't she in love with father-in-law?" Lin Yanlei's expression changed and she said, "Mother, I didn't mean it." "Nothing." Ningxu said indifferently, "I don't blame you. You don't have to take it to heart. Just live well within you." Lin Yanlei nodded and left. As soon as Lin Yanlei left, Ningxu suddenly laughed. The more he thought about it, the funnier it was. What was Mingzhu doing now? Using her own child to frame others, all because of her own jealousy. She was jealous that Lin Yanlei was the main wife, jealous that Lin Yanlei had a young and valiant husband. People were indeed greedy. In the plot, Yu loved Mingzhu. Even if Yu was married, he still had Mingzhu in his heart, but Mingzhu did not care. Wei Lingxian loved but could not get her, so she was in pain. Everyone in the general's residence was on Mingzhu's side. And Yu loved her, and Yu also loved her. It seemed that Mingzhu was the happiest in the general's residence. But now, Li Nianlei appeared. Her husband loved her dearly, and everyone liked her. This made Mingzhu jealous, especially now that Yu was not very good. Mingzhu's personality was weak and obedient. She liked men who were as tall as gods. Yu, on the other hand, was younger than Yu. She had strong hormones. Sure enough, things between the bed were not smooth, and all the problems came out. There was nothing between a man and a woman that could not be solved with one thing. If one thing was not enough, then two. It was great to torture each other like this. Let's see how long your true love can last. There was a limit to everything in the world. The faster you overdraft, the faster it dissipates. Ning Shu hummed a song, looking very happy. Because of Mingzhu's slip, old madam did not let Mingzhu come over to eat with everyone. The reason was to take care of the baby. Between her granddaughter-in-law and her son's concubine, old madam chose her granddaughter-in-law. Since Mingzhu did not go, Yu naturally had to accompany Mingzhu. Without Mingzhu's bitter face, Ning Shu ate much more happily. Yu wanted to return to the army in Lizhou. He still wanted to return to the army after a month of marriage. It was just a pity for the newlyweds. Although Li Nianlei was reluctant, she did not stubbornly let Yu stay. Ning Shu approved of Yu returning to the army. The current Yu was much more capable than the Yu in the plot. It was not Yu's turn to save him on the battlefield. The father and son did not have too much of a knot because of Mingzhu. Yu would not die like in the plot. If Yu did not die, Mingzhu would not die for love. It was good to be alive. Don't die. Ning Shu was thinking about when to leave this world when Zhu came in and told him that Mingzhu was born prematurely. The child was born prematurely at 7 months. Ning Shu did not know the reason. He heard from the servants in Mingzhu's courtyard that Mingzhu and Yu quarreled. Yu pushed Mingzhu, and Mingzhu fell to the ground and saw red. Ning Shu, who heard the news, was speechless. She was quite good at acting. When Ning Shu rushed to Mingzhu's courtyard, old madam was already waiting. Mingzhu's high-pitched and painful voice came from the house. If she had the strength to scream, she might as well save the strength to give birth. Yu knelt on the ground and held his head with both hands. He pulled his hair and hammered his head. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Ning Shu was expressionless. He pretended to comfort him. Mingzhu will be fine. Old madam sighed. She felt that it was not easy for this child to be born safely. She did not know if a child born prematurely at 7 months could survive. Ah! Another high-pitched voice came from the house. When Yu heard this voice, his eyes turned red and he hammered the ground like a wild beast. Mingzhu, nothing can happen to you, Yu said in a low and painful voice. Old madam asked, what happened? Why did you see red? Yu's lips trembled. There were some pregnancy spots on the pregnant Mingzhu's face. Yu had just said it casually, but Mingzhu's reaction was huge. She cried and shouted that Yu despised her and that Yu still had Wei Lingxian in his heart. In the beginning, Yu still tried to persuade her. He swore to the heavens that he only had Mingzhu in his heart, but Mingzhu still did not believe him. She cried and blamed Yu. Mingzhu had nothing now. She had no family. She had been demoted to a commoner. Her brother was no longer her brother. Yu was her only hope, so Mingzhu naturally had to hold on to him. Chapter 405. No matter what, Mingzhu only had Yu. She was so poor that she only had Yu. Even if she was dissatisfied with Yu, she could not leave him. She had developed an emotional dependence on Anu. Ming Zhu had been in the general's manor for a while. In private, there were servants who mocked her for not being a Junju and coming to be someone's concubine. In the beginning, Ming Zhu did not think much of it and even mocked them for not knowing love. She was not even afraid of death for Anu and did not care about her status. However, after staying in the general's manor for a long time and hearing such words, Ming Zhu's heart began to waver. Her life in the general's manor was not as comfortable as when she was a Junju. She even had to haggle over every ounce of money. However, there was no turning back. Right now, Ming Zhu could only be with Anu. She even had to be lovey-dovey with Anu to comfort herself that her decision was not wrong. However, she was sensitive and wanted to use a sharp attitude to test Anu's sincerity. As long as Anu's attitude was slightly off, Ming Zhu's heart would be filled with regret. Right now, Anu and Ming Zhu's hearts were tired. However, they had to maintain this relationship and show that they loved each other very much. Not only did Ming Zhu give a lot, but Anu also gave a lot. His career had come to an end. His colleagues even mocked him behind his back. They mocked him for losing the emperor's favor for a woman. In order to prove to everyone that they were right, Anu and Ming Zhu could only continue to love each other. Ning Shu, why are they so tired? TSK TSK TSK, Ming Zhu's moans in the room became weaker and weaker. Basin after basin of blood was carried out. It was a shocking sight. The matriarch closed her eyes. Clearly, she no longer had any expectations for this child. Ning Shu had Zhu, give a piece of ginseng to the midwife for Ming Zhu to eat. Ginseng could replenish energy and at least give birth to the child. And you saw Ning Shu take out a piece of ginseng and was startled. He said, "Ling Xian, thank you." Ning Shu smiled and did not say anything. "Mother, has the child not been born yet?" Li Nianlei had been instructing the servants to boil water and boil medicine. However, after such a long time, Li Nianlei came over to take a look. She was worried about Ning Shu. Ning Shu also frowned. In the plot, Ming Zhu was supposed to die. Could it be that Ming Zhu would die? Ning Shu did not want Ming Zhu to die. If Ming Zhu died, she would become a cinnabar mole and bright moonlight in Anu's heart. Being together day and night, they would only see each other's flaws. If a person died, the beauty left in the hearts of the living would be magnified infinitely. Ning Shu returned to his own courtyard and wrote a prescription for Zhu, to get the herbs. Ming Zhu had already lost all her strength from screaming. Furthermore, she felt as if there was a knife twisting in her stomach, and her mouth was being fed bitter medicine. Ming Zhu felt that she was going to die. Before she died, Ming Zhu wanted to see Anu, but what came out of her mouth was a weak moan. The midwife shouted with all her might. Ming Zhu seemed to have heard Wei Lingxian's voice outside the house. She was talking to Anu so tenderly. Ming Zhu was furious. She had painfully given birth, but Anu stayed with Wei Lingxian. If she died, would Anu still remember her? Ning Shu saw that Ming Zhu was not giving birth for a long time and shook her head. She deliberately raised her voice and shouted, "Hubby, Ming Zhu will definitely be fine. I will always be with you until Ming Zhu gives birth." Anu was originally at a loss, but when he heard his wife comforting him, the anger in his heart dissipated a little. He said, "Ling Xian, I'm very worried about Ming Zhu." Ning Shu was speechless. Fuck off. How could he say such things in front of his wife? It seemed that Anu did not care about his wife's feelings at all. After a day, Ming Zhu finally gave birth. She gave birth to a thin and weak daughter with bruises all over her body. Ming Zhu's body was weak, and her pelvis was small to begin with. In addition, this child was not a ripe melon, so it was especially difficult to give birth. The old lady looked at the kitten-like baby in the swaddling clothes. Her breathing was weak, and she cried like a kitten. She sighed. "And you did not look at the child?" He wanted to rush into the delivery room, which was filled with blood, but the old lady stopped him. Ning Shu went in to take a look. Ming Zhu's face was extremely pale, without a trace of blood. Ning Shu secretly pricked Ming Zhu for a while. Of course, he was doing a good deed to prevent Ming Zhu from bleeding. Ning Shu firmly believed that death was nothing. Living and enduring everything was the most painful. In the original plot, Ming Zhu and An Yu died and were buried together, while Wei Lingxian lived and endured everything painfully. The child was too small and did not have the ability to suck at all. Even if there was a wet nurse, the child could not drink milk on her own. She could only let the wet nurse squeeze the milk out. Li Nianlei could only feed the child bit by bit. Furthermore, the child choked easily. Every time she fed the child, Li Nianlei trembled in fear, afraid that something would happen to the child. When Ming Zhu woke up, she wanted a child. When she saw how thin and weak her child was, she immediately cried and blamed An Yu. When something happened to Ming Zhu, An Yu was very worried. However, Ming Zhu was fine. Hearing Ming Zhu's blame, An Yu felt very tired. Looking at his thin and weak daughter, An Yu felt even more tired. The old lady knew that Ming Zhu was not someone who could take care of the child. If she really let Ming Zhu take care of the child might not survive. She took the child away and took care of it herself. Then, she asked Ning Shu and Li Nianlei to help. The old lady's actions made Ming Zhu break down. Her own child actually had to be raised by someone else, and it was even raised by Wei Lingxian. Ming Zhu was very sad. She cried and asked An Yu to bring the child back. An Yu explained that the child was in danger now. When the child was better, they could bring her back. Furthermore, Ming Zhu was weak now and could not take care of the child at all. Seeing that An Yu did not agree, Ming Zhu cried even more sadly. She blamed An Yu for separating mother and daughter. She blamed An Yu for being seduced by Wei Lingxian. An Yu was helpless. He hugged Ming Zhu tightly and firmly said that he loved Ming Zhu. This sentence was always on the tip of his tongue. Ming Zhu's heart ached that An Yu refused to take their child back. She lifted the blanket and ran barefoot to the old lady's courtyard in her underwear. With a plop, she knelt in front of the old lady. Ning Shu was speechless. Didn't her leg hurt? Furthermore, she was in confinement. Was it okay to ruin her body like this? When Ming Zhu saw Ning Shu holding her child in his arms, her heart burned with anger. She felt that Wei Lingxian was going to snatch her child away. "Old madam, please return my child to me. I can't live without her." Ming Zhu's face was covered in tears. She kowtowed to the old lady in a pitiful manner. "Old madam, please don't separate us." The old lady gasped and almost closed her eyes. She stared blankly at Ming Zhu, not knowing what to say. Ning Shu felt that Ming Zhu's brain was indeed different. Could she take care of her daughter in her condition? Chapter 406. Ming Zhu insisted on getting her child back. She did not care about her weak body and knelt on the ground. She kowtowed as if she was not afraid of pain and kept begging the old lady to return her child. She looked so miserable and helpless that it was almost snowing in June. Ning Shu felt that the child in her arms had peed. It was warm, and then the child burst into tears. His cries were soft, and it sounded like he was sobbing. It made one's heart ache. Ning Shu and Li Nianlei quickly changed the child's diaper. When Ming Zhu saw her daughter crying, her tears fell even more. She kowtowed to the old lady and said, "Old lady, I beg you to pity me, don't separate us mother and daughter, my child is still so young, she can't leave me." The old lady was speechless. Ning Shu was speechless. Li Nianlei was speechless. Ning Shu did not know what Ming Zhu was thinking. According to the rules, she was the child's mother. She had the right to take the child away. As a concubine, Mingzhu did not have the right to raise the child. Besides, the child was weak now. No one felt that Mingzhu could take care of the child. However, Mingzhu felt that others wanted to steal her child. She could not understand it. The old lady held her walking stick and said coldly, "Go back to where you came from. Don't make a scene here." Mingzhu looked at the old lady in disbelief. She said bitterly, "Old lady, you have children too. Why are you so cruel to separate us?" Ningxu rubbed his forehead. Why wasn't you not online at this time? He could not take it anymore. This kind of person lived in her own world. She could not hear what others said. And you rushed over and saw Mingzhu trembling and kneeling on the ground. He hurriedly carried her up. Mingzhu cried and said to Anyu, "Can you take our child back? That's our child." Anyu rubbed his forehead and said tiredly, "Mother has never thought of stealing our child. This child is also her granddaughter. Mother will not harm her. The child is weak now. Mother will help take care of her. You have to recover first." Mingzhu bit her pale lips and looked at Anyu accusingly. She was sad that Anyu was not on her side. Anyu carried Mingzhu away. Mingzhu struggled the whole way. The old lady sighed. "What kind of people are they?" Ningxu only smiled faintly. Mingzhu was innocent and naive, she did not know much about the world, but she could not even differentiate between good and bad, so there would be trouble between the two of them. After that, Mingzhu would run over to the old madam every 2 to 3 days, insisting that the old madam return her daughter to her. She did not do her confinement properly, and would often kneel on the ground and kowtow. The old lady was so angry that she had a migraine. Fortunately, the child could drink milk on her own now. Seeing Mingzhu's behavior, the old lady originally wanted to wait for the child to get better before giving the child to Mingzhu, but she decided to raise the child by her side. She was afraid that when the child grew up, it would be like Mingzhu. The general's residence could not afford to lose this person. Although she was a concubine's daughter, she could not lose the reputation of the general's residence. Therefore, now that the old lady was determined not to hand the child over to Mingzhu, Mingzhu made an even bigger fuss. She would make a fuss with Anyu every 2 to 3 days, asking him to take the child back. On one side was his mother, and on the other was his beloved. Moreover, the old lady had already made the reason very clear. Now that the child was weak, the old lady was helping. The old lady was already old, and she still had to take care of the child. She was already very tired, and Mingzhu was still making a fuss with him. And you did not know what to do. And you had no choice but to be tortured by Mingzhu. He rarely went to Mingzhu's courtyard and always avoided her, afraid that there would be some conflict. He simply did not know what to do with the crying Mingzhu now. After a month of confinement, Mingzhu was even more delicate than before. She was even weaker than before, and her face was so pale that there was no color at all on her face. Ningxu felt that if the wind blew a little stronger, Mingzhu would be blown away. Why did she torture herself like this? Why did she have to suffer so much? Ningxu did not understand what these female leads were thinking. Life was already so difficult, so why did they have to torture themselves? Li Nianlei was found to be pregnant, which made the old lady really happy. This was a great-grandchild. Ningxu was also happy. He felt that he had aged and become a grandmother. When Mingzhu heard this news, her tears fell because she thought of her daughter again. During her confinement, Mingzhu was always crying, causing her eyes to be hazy with tears. Sometimes, she would even cry uncontrollably. When the wind blew a little stronger, her eyes would feel uncomfortable. Mingzhu had been out of confinement for 2 months, but Mingzhu and Anyu did not have any lingering feelings. Mingzhu, who was immersed in her daughter's matters all day, finally reacted and gently pestered Anyu. Mingzhu had been making a fuss, and suddenly, she was no longer angry. Anyu was also very happy. Naturally, they hugged each other. And Yu, who had been drinking Chinese medicine for nearly a year, was still very fast. Soon, he handed over his rations, causing Mingzhu, who was hugging Yu, to stiffen. Mingzhu was very angry and pushed Yu away. Then, she turned her back to Yu. Yu rubbed his forehead in distress. He did not know what was wrong with his body. Being despised by Mingzhu, Yu felt that his dignity was trampled on by Mingzhu. Both of them were unable to face each other. Yu put on his clothes and left. Mingzhu silently cried again. The next day, Ningxu saw Yu's sallow and distressed face and Mingzhu's incomparably bitter face. She chuckled and chatted with Li Nianlei, ignoring the two people who were not living harmoniously on the bed. The old lady told Li Nianlei to pay attention to things during her pregnancy. Li Nianlei smiled and nodded. When Yu came in, he saw such a harmonious scene. However, it did not seem to have anything to do with him. When he walked in, his family only glanced at him and talked to each other. No one cared about him. Yu was helpless and angry. Ningxu saw that there was nothing between Mingzhu and Yu. There was no eye contact. Mingzhu's face was full of fatigue, and there was numbness between her brows. Therefore, it was easy to fall in love, but not easy to continue loving. Love was fragile and changeable. A little setback could cause love to change. After breakfast, Ningxu returned to his courtyard and heard 2333's voice. Ding, mission completed. Leaving the mission world. Ningxu smiled. He finally left this world. His head was dizzy. When Ningxu opened his eyes again, he was already in the system space. He then lay on the bed and slept. When he woke up, Ningxu first cultivated for a period of time. When his soul was full, he took the watering bottle and sprinkled water on the potted plants. Seeing the water dripping down from the green leaves, Ningxu felt his restless heart calm down. Chapter 407. 2333, let's take a look at the points for this mission. Ningxu was still wondering if he had guessed Wei Lingxian's intentions correctly. Ningxu had already tried his best to save the general's mansion so that Wei Lingxian's two children could have a better life. Okay. 2333 said. Ningxu's stats panel appeared in front of him. Number, 23333 Name, Ningxu, Beginner Mission Taker, Age, 27 points, 500002500000 Soul, 200 Health, 60 Wisdom, 85 Charm, 3 Luck, 34 Mental Strength, 120 Combat Strength, 40 Faith, 1 Aptitude, 26 Merit, 15-20 Skills, 5th Ring Spear Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Beginner Level Honorable Title, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Sister Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader's Halo, Grass's Blessing, Fulfill Wei Lingxian's Wish. Mission Completion, 100. Received 30 Attribute Points. Ningxu was very surprised. 250,000 points and 30 Attribute Points. This was the highest number of points in history, and also the highest number of Attribute Points. Ningxu breathed a sigh of relief. This meant that Wei Lingxian approved of her actions, so she had to try to put herself in her shoes. Ningxu fully understood the importance of wisdom, and added her attribute points to wisdom and combat strength. Number, 23333 Name, Ningxu, Beginner Mission Taker, Age, 27 points, 250,000 Soul, 200 Health, 60 Wisdom, 85-15 Charm, 3 Luck, 34 Mental Strength, 120 Combat Strength, 40-15 Faith, 1 Aptitude, 26 Merit, 35 Skills, 5th Ring Spear Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Beginner Level Honorable Title, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Sister Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader's Halo, Grass's Blessing. Ningxu added 15 attribute points to wisdom, but he didn't. Feel anything? Ning Shu picked up a book from the bookshelf and started to read it. The things that were difficult for her to understand in the past were now much easier to read. She didn't have the same confused expression as before. Could this be the performance of a high IQ, making it easier to understand knowledge? Ning Shu asked, is my intelligence high now? What is the upper limit of intelligence? 2333, Hehe, what does Hehe mean? Ning Shu felt the system was mocking him. 2333 said, your IQ is really not that high. Among all the quest enforcers, you are probably at the bottom of the bottom. Your IQ should be around 500. Your IQ, Hehe. Fuck. Did he mean that she was mentally retarded? Ning Shu's heart, which had been a little proud a moment ago, turned cold in an instant. Ning Shu started to browse the exchange shop and bought water, fasting pills, and medicine. Seeing that she had 300,000 points, Ning Shu wanted to buy something. However, when she saw that there were millions of points, Ning Shu was stunned. Especially when she saw an amulet that could block a fatal attack for a quest enforcer. This was simply a lifesaver. How could there be such a thing? If one encountered a fatal attack during a mission, one's soul would not be erased because of being killed. It would be the same as the previous mission enforcers and would be killed by others. Ning Shu drooled as she looked at the amulet. However, this amulet could only be exchanged with merit points. Moreover, it required 40 merit points. However, she only had 35 merit points at the moment. She was still short of 5 merit points. Moreover, merit points were not something that could be earned like points. Even the system didn't know how to calculate merit points. A quest might give 1 merit point, or it might not. For example, Wei Lingxian's quest didn't give her any merit points. When she had enough merit points, she would definitely exchange them for an amulet. However, Ning Shu still felt that merit points were a little expensive. She had completed so many quests, but she only had 35 merit points. However, anything that could save her life was good stuff. Ning Shu sat on the ground and began to cultivate. She felt that her soul was stronger than before. When she touched her soul, it felt like her skin. Ning Shu wondered if she could rebuild her body. No matter what, there was no harm in having a strong soul. It wouldn't be easily affected by the emotions of the person who entrusted it. Ning Shu stretched and said to 2333, let's enter the quest. Okay. Ning Shu's head was dizzy for a moment. When her soul had completely adapted, she opened her eyes. The light was a little dazzling. Ning Shu blocked it with her hands and then turned her hands over to examine them. It was because this pair of hands was too beautiful. They were slender like jade and looked like they were carved out of jade. The nails were shiny and elegant. However, this pair of hands belonged to a man. Because they were very wide, Ning Shu touched her chest. She had chest muscles, but they were flat. Damn, how did I become a man again? After touching her lower body, Ning Shu completely gave up. She looked at the decoration in the room. It was low-key and luxurious. Everything was exquisite. Obviously, the owner was rich. And the bed was very big. Ning Shu suddenly thought of a sentence, every morning, I wake up on a 60 square meter bed. Go away, you damn money. 2333, how did I become a man? Ning Shu asked 2333. Last time it was a mistake, but this time it was a man again. 2333 didn't say anything. Ning Shu shouted again, hey, 2333, what's going on? 2333 still didn't say anything. Ning Shu, what's wrong with it? Is it dead? Ning Shu shouted twice. The system died. Ning Shu gave up on summoning the system and accepted the plot first. But after seeing the plot, Ning Shu felt that his whole body was not good. Very bad. The original owner was called Gong Luo. He was the CEO of W City's Miyagi Group. The Miyagi Group was deeply rooted in W City. In the W City's business world, Gong Luo was born with a diamond in his mouth. He was handsome and rich. He could beat any woman between the ages of 8 and 88. The original owner had a high IQ and was a man of means. After Gong Luo took over the Miyagi Group, it went up another level. The Gong family became a top rich family. This kind of man could make a woman go crazy. Gong Luo was a man who was loved by millions. But Ning Shu had a headache because Gong Luo was the male lead of this world. Male lead, damn, how can a main character like you counterattack? Ning Shu felt that he was running further and further down the unknown road. This was the male lead's top configuration. What was there to be dissatisfied with? Ning Shu felt that he was transported to the wrong world. And this plot made Ning Shu want to die. He really wanted to die. Chapter 408. This was a doting story that was so sweet that it made one's teeth fall off. The female lead, Anwan's boyfriend, cheated on her and slept with her best friend. Anwan was so angry that she decided to find a gigolo and slept with Gong Luo. When she went to work the next day, she found out that the gigolo she found was actually her superior and the company's CEO. What followed was a love story. Before Anwan could react, the two of them had already gotten a marriage certificate and started a sweet story of doting on his wife. If there were any villains who came to cause trouble, Gong Luo dealt with them one by one. Ning Shu rubbed his forehead. He really couldn't understand why the high and mighty CEO would fancy an ordinary woman who was cheated on by her boyfriend. She didn't sleep with her boyfriend, then her boyfriend cheated on her, so she went to look for a gigolo. When she was with her boyfriend, she kept her chastity, but when her boyfriend cheated on her, she boldly looked for a gigolo. Furthermore, Gong Luo only wanted this woman and doted on her. It was simply killing Ning Shu's logic dog. Perhaps this virgin body was left for the male lead, Gong Luo. Ning Shu could only sigh. Girls must protect themselves well. What if the gigolo was sick? What if she got pregnant? What if she got pregnant? Was she going to look for the gigolo? Ning Shu lit a candle for Anwan's ex-boyfriend. He was destined to not get the female lead's body. You couldn't sleep with a tall, rich, and handsome guy just because you went out. If you slept with a cake-rich guy, the cake-rich guy might not necessarily take responsibility. Gong Luo was very good to Anwan, so good that all the women in the world were envious of Anwan. The story of an ordinary woman and a CEO. The overbearing CEO fell in love with me. Gong Luo was a very smart man, but when he faced Anwan, he doted on her unconditionally. He was like a marionette, doing his best to treat Anwan well. He treated Anwan as if she was his own life. Gong Luo felt that something was wrong, but when he faced Anwan, his heart softened and he doted on her. Even if there were any misunderstandings, they would be easily resolved. Gong Luo felt that he was a marionette, always doing exaggerated things for Anwan, such as chasing her from 1,000 miles away, a room full of diamond rings. When he faced Anwan, Gong Luo felt that he was broken. Ning Shu felt that this was love. Since he slept with her, he had to take responsibility for her. Gong Luo felt an unknown force controlling him, and even felt that the heavens had forcefully stuffed such a woman into his hands. He didn't know if he loved Gong Luo deeply, but in his heart, he felt that it had to be her. Gong Luo had a fiancée, but he married Anwan, so his fiancée was naturally used as cannon fodder. Ning Shu felt that she should become this cannon fodder's fiancée instead of the great Nanzhu Lord. What the fuck? Right now, Gong Luo wanted to get rid of the power that was controlling him. Gong Luo was a proud person. He would never accept a love that was controlled like this. Even if he really liked this Anwan and loved this Anwan, it was out of his own heart and not because he was being controlled by some unknown power. Ning Shu scratched his head. Oh, how could she resist the heavenly Tao laws? I refuse with a capital refuse. But now that he had lost contact with the system, Ning Shu couldn't go back now, so he had to do this quest even if he didn't want to. Ning Shu felt tired. He had never met such a deceptive system before. Feeling that I will never love again. Even Gong Luo couldn't get rid of the plot, so how could she? Ning Shu wiped his face and got up from the bed, preparing to take a shower. He looked at his own body. It was strong and muscular, with abs and a Apollo's belt. It was simply too perfect. Especially his face, which was slanted to his temples. His facial features were exquisite, and his pair of bright black eyes were deep and mesmerizing. Ning Shu was amazed by his handsomeness. Touching his male body, Ning Shu finished showering and put on his suit. When he looked in the mirror, he was practically drooling. The suit made his body look tall and slender, with a kind of abstinence and sexiness that made people want to conquer him. Ning Shu went downstairs. The servant, Auntie Li, told Ning Shu, "Sir, your coffee is ready." Ning Shu sat on the sofa, reading the newspaper, and then drinking the extremely bitter coffee, smacking his lips. Ning Shu leaned against the sofa. Since he wanted to get rid of the plot, he could solve it by not sleeping with An. Yes, not sleeping with An. After breakfast, Ning Shu went to work. Then, he realized that with his intelligence, he couldn't handle the company's affairs well. At first, he was a little flustered. How did Gong Luo manage to handle the company's affairs and date at the same time? Whenever something happened to An, Gong Luo would put down his work and even hold a meeting. If something happened to An, the meeting would be suspended. It seemed that with An, the center of Gong Luo's life became An, and only An. Ning Shu firmly believed in the concept of love. That was, if you liked someone, you had to work hard to be like the person you liked. Only then would you be worthy of the person you liked. An was a very ordinary girl. She grew up in a completely different environment from Gong Luo. The level of contact was also different, and the style of doing things was also different. How could they love each other when they had different values? In this love, only Gong Luo endlessly gave, and An was a woman living under Gong Luo's wings. In this life, she only needed to do one thing, and that was to let Gong Luo pamper her, and pamper her again. Ning Shu had a headache. After dealing with the matters in the morning, if it weren't for the presence of a few secretaries, Ning Shu would have really knelt down in front of this pile of documents. Feeling a little tired, Ning Shu went to the bedroom next to the office to rest. He sat on the bed and meditated to see if he could cultivate the ultimate martial arts. After cultivating for a while, he felt refreshed. However, he didn't cultivate Qi Jin. This world wasn't suitable for cultivation in the first place. There were restrictions. In addition, he didn't have enough spiritual energy. It was enough to strengthen his body. After leaving the room and looking at the documents on the table, Ning Shu felt a headache coming on. He felt that his intelligence was really not good. It seemed that he had to add more attributes to his intelligence points in the future. Otherwise, he would really not be able to handle some missions in the future. Ning Shu decided to go to the bar at night to take a look. He wanted to see how the plot would have developed if he hadn't slept with An. At night, the lights of the city were waning. Ning Shu drove to the bar. When he walked in, the bar was filled with noisy music. Everyone was doing their best to twist their bodies. Perhaps it was because this body was too obvious. The moment Ning Shu walked in, many women surrounded her. There were even men who surrounded her. Fuck, I'm not gay. I'm not a lesbian. Ning Shu saw An sitting in the corner drinking. She was drinking and cursing her scumbag ex-boyfriend. Ning Shu looked at An. She wasn't very beautiful, but she had a pure aura. Her temperament made people feel comfortable. A delicate little beauty, a pretty girl from a humble family. Ning Shu didn't appear in front of An, but he also didn't see An looking for a male escort. Instead, someone wanted to take advantage of her and was chased away by An. There was a change in the plot. Chapter 409. Ning Shu watched An from a hidden spot. Seeing that An kept drinking, she left the bar. Ning Shu followed behind her and saw An get into a taxi. Looking at the taxi driving away, Ning Shu had a bad feeling in her heart. She felt that this mission was going to fail. For the next few days, Ning Shu went to this bar. Whenever she went, An would be there. Furthermore, she drank more and more. She kept scolding the adulterous couple. Clearly, she was very angry with her ex-boyfriend and best friend. However, Ning Shu did not see any signs of An looking for a gigolo. Damn, Ning Shu finally knew where the problem was. If she did not have any relationship with An, then the plot would not progress. The beginning of the story was An and Gong Luo sleeping together. Only then did the story progress. However, now that she did not have any relationship with An, the plot remained stagnant. Ning Shu realized a very dangerous thing. If she did not leave with Ning Shu and An, then the plot would not progress. The mission would not be completed. She would stay in this world forever until her soul power and life points were depleted. However, if she left, then the plot would allow her to be with An. How could she escape the plot? Ning Shu felt that Gong Luo actually wanted to get rid of An. However, the powerful plot made Gong Luo helpless. He even felt that he loved An without any dignity. Gong Luo was cold and wise. However, with An, he felt that he had lost his intelligence. The things he did were very childish. It was true that people in love had a negative IQ. To sleep or not to sleep, to sleep or not to sleep, to sleep or not to sleep, to sleep or not to sleep. If she did not sleep, then the plot would not progress. She would stay in the plot forever until her soul power was depleted and she was waiting for death. If she slept, then she would have to take responsibility. It would be the same as in the plot. How could she change the plot? To sleep or not to sleep, 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 using a man's body to sleep with a girl. Ning Shu pulled at his hair. I choose to die. Ning Shu walked over to An with a glass of wine in his hand and sat beside her. An was a little drunk. When she saw a man appear beside her, her expression turned cold. Go away, there's no need for service here. Ning Shu didn't say anything. An turned her head and saw a man sitting beside her. He was tall and handsome, and his side profile was charming. His eyes sparkled in the dim bar. Noble and proud. An patted Ning Shu on the shoulder and said, "You're so good-looking. Why are you doing this kind of work?" An looked at this man and thought of her scumbag ex-boyfriend and her shameless best friend. The two of them flaunted their affection in front of her every day, and that scumbag even said that she was a hypocrite. How much do you charge for a night? I'll cover you, Ning Shu asked after An struggled for a while. Puff. Cough, cough, cough. Ning Shu nearly choked on his saliva and cried. Damn, the female lead also chose her partner. Before she appeared, she didn't think of looking for a gigolo. Now that he appeared, he was being treated as a gigolo and was even being covered for the night. Ning Shu cleared his throat and said something a domineering CEO should say. Woman, you can't afford to sleep with me. I'm very expensive. An rolled her eyes at Ning Shu and gulped down her wine, burping. Ning Shu said drunkenly, I'll cover you for tonight. An said as she awkwardly wrapped her arms around Ning Shu's neck. Aren't you in this line of work? Ning Shu smelled the scent of alcohol on An body and was very curious as to how Gong Luo managed to eat this woman. He was so drunk that his entire body reeked of alcohol. His appetite was abnormally good. Ning Shu wanted to push Nguyen's hands away, but Nguyen's hands were tightly wrapped around his neck. It was as if her entire body was leaning against him. Ning Shu wanted to die. She really couldn't do it. "It's you. You'll serve me tonight," Nguyen said domineeringly. It was obvious that she was very drunk. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu booked a room, then used all his strength to push Nguyen's hands away and threw her on the bed. Nguyen fell on the bed and moaned. Her face was flushed red and she looked very seductive. Then, Ning Shu lowered his head and looked down. There was a reaction. Ning Shu really wanted to die. Only now did he realize that men could really separate their desires from their emotions. Ning Shu didn't care about Nguyen on the bed and went straight home. Fuck, he really couldn't do it with a girl. As for Nguyen in the hotel, Ning Shu couldn't be bothered. Although Nguyen was just a weak woman, other than Gong Luo who had taken her body, no other man could do it. Even her ex-boyfriend couldn't. No wonder her ex-boyfriend cheated on her. Actually, Gong Luo wasn't unhappy. After all, Nguyen was wholehearted and even gave her virginity to Gong Luo. Ning Shu was very distressed. What the fuck should he do? What the fuck should he do? What the fuck? When he got home, it was already midnight. Ning Shu pulled the tie around his neck. Thinking about how tiring it was for a man to wear something like this every day, Ning Shu felt a little out of breath. Opening the door, Auntie Li placed the shoes in front of Ning Shu and said, "Sir, Miss Song is here." Miss Song. Ning Shu was in a daze for a moment. Only then did he remember that Gong Luo had a fiancée called Song Ning. She was a match for Gong Luo, but compared to the Gong family, the Song family paled in comparison. Gong Luo and Song Ning's marriage was a strong alliance between the two families. It was beneficial for the development of both families. Not to mention, Song Ning loved Gong Luo. Her future husband was so good. Song Ning was envied by her group of sisters. Ning Shu nodded and walked in. He saw a beautiful woman sitting on the sofa. She was slim and had a well-proportioned body. She wore a knee-length skirt, revealing her slender calves. She had delicate ankles and flawless skin. Just by looking at her legs, one could tell that she was a beauty. Ning Shu looked at her face and was stunned. He saw that Song Ning was very beautiful. Her skin was creamy and her facial features together gave people a very beautiful feeling. Her eyes were watery and the corners of her mouth were curved. Her smiling face emitted a lustrous luster under the light, like a beautiful pearl. Ning Shu once again doubted Gong Luo's taste. Why would such a beautiful fiancée like Nguyen? To be honest, Song Ning was much prettier than Nguyen. Gong Luo. Song Ning walked in front of Ning Shu and naturally took his arm. She raised her head and smiled at Ning Shu. The corners of her eyes were curved. She was very beautiful. Ning Shu's eyes were dazed for a moment. Oh my God, he felt like he was mesmerized. Why are you back so late? Hey, you smell like alcohol. Did you go drinking? Song Ning frowned and said. Ning Shu nodded and asked, "Why are you looking for me so late?" Chapter 410. To be honest, Ning Shu did not know how to interact with Gong Luo's fiancée. Moreover, Song Ning seemed to like Gong Luo a lot, which made things even stranger. It's already midnight. Do you have something important to say? Ning Shu looked at Song Ning and asked. Otherwise, she would not have waited until midnight. Song Ning sat on the sofa and leaned back. Her petite body seemed to be embedded into the sofa. She said, "I haven't seen you in a long time. I came to see you. There's a family gathering this weekend. I came specifically to look for you. Uncle and auntie will be there." Song Ning frowned. Her expression carried the charm of a little girl, but also an indescribable naivety. She was really a beautiful woman. Even to Ning Shu, Song Ning was a very beautiful and elegant woman. She made people's hearts go soft and itch. How much glory did the female lead, An Nuan, have to defeat Song Ning? She defeated a woman who was prettier, wealthier, and more capable than her. Ning Shu said, "For this kind of thing, you can just make a call. You don't have to wait until now." Song Ning stood up and stood in front of Ning Shu. She raised her small face. Her face was like a lotus petal, fresh and moving. Ning Shu felt his heart go numb. He even had a feeling that he was going to fall in love with this woman in front of him. Ning Shu quickly shook his head. "Oh my, I'm a woman. How can I fall in love with a woman?" Song Ning frowned. She seemed to be dissatisfied with Ning Shu's reaction. She frowned and said, "I haven't seen you in a long time. I came to see you." Song Ning counted on her fingers. She seemed to be counting how long it had been since they last met. Then, she used her jade-white finger to poke Ning Shu's chest. "Can't I come to see you?" Ning Shu was speechless. So it was so tough to dress as a man. Not only did it feel awkward, but he also had to face all kinds of girls. It was too tiring to love. Ning Shu grabbed Song Ning's hand that was poking his chest. It hurt a lot. Song Ning furrowed her brows. A trace of displeasure flashed across her face, but she quickly smiled. "It's already so late. Either you send me back, or I'll stay here." Ning Shu was about to offer to drive her home when Song Ning yawned. "I'm tired. I'll ask Auntie Li to prepare a guest room for me." Ning Shu's lips twitched. He asked Auntie Li to prepare a guest room for Song Ning. Ning Shu felt very hungry and tired, so he prepared to go upstairs to rest. After taking a quick bath, Ning Shu laid on the spacious bed and stared at the ceiling. Ning Shu pulled at his hair, thinking about this quest. This mission was simply too difficult. It didn't matter if he slept or not. He really wanted to die. Ning Shu's head hurt from thinking about it. Why not just let the second male lead sleep with the female lead? But with the way the plot was going, the second male lead probably wouldn't be able to sleep with her. Ning Shu turned over and heard knocking sounds on the door. Ning Shu got up and opened the door. He saw Song Ning in white pajamas. Ning Shu asked directly, "What's the matter?" "It's late. Go to sleep. Don't try to cause trouble." Song Ning furrowed her brows. She said gloomily, "Gong Luo, you don't love me. You don't have any feelings for me. Then let's break off the engagement." Ning Shu was a little impatient. "Since you want to break off the engagement, then let's do it." Then he closed the door with a bang. Outside the room, Song Ning's expression was ugly. How could this be? Song Ning touched her face. Gong Luo was actually indifferent. She had investigated. Gong Luo and that woman, An Nuan, were not related yet. Why was he still so cold to her? No matter what, she had to make Gong Luo like her. Song Ning regretted saying that she wanted to break off the engagement. If she didn't have the status of fiancé, how could she get close to Gong Luo? She really didn't know what was so good about An Nuan that Gong Luo liked her so much. Song Ning returned to her room gloomily. She clenched her fists. She had to get Gong Luo. Ning Shu didn't know what Song Ning was thinking. He didn't sleep well the whole night. The next morning, his beard was unshaven. Ning Shu hurriedly shaved his beard. Then he cut his handsome face, leaving a red mark. Looking at his handsome face in the mirror, he decided to just ruin it. The female lead probably wouldn't like him. Without his charming face, the female lead naturally wouldn't like him. Moreover, the female lead was someone who treated money like dirt. Just having money wasn't enough. It was really a tragedy to ruin his beauty. Ning Shu patted his face. It wasn't easy to be handsome. He couldn't ruin it. When Gong Luo came back and saw his handsome face ruined, how could he face life? Especially for a public figure like Gong Luo, who would appear on TV, magazines, and newspapers at any time. After putting on his clothes, Ning Shu went downstairs. He saw that Song Ning had already woken up. When she saw Ning Shu, Song Ning smiled brightly. This smile was warm and seemed to be able to dispel the haze in one's heart. Even Ning Shu felt like he was going to be healed by this smile. He felt like he couldn't control himself. Damn, don't lust after a woman's body. Ning Shu nodded to Song Ning. He sat opposite Song Ning and prepared to eat breakfast. Song Ning pushed the milk in front of Ning Shu and said, "Don't drink coffee in the morning. Drink milk. It's good for your body." Okay. Ning Shu couldn't drink the bitter coffee and obediently drank the milk. Song Ning saw that Ning Shu was obedient. She smiled, but then her expression became a little gloomy. Ning Shu and Song Ning ate breakfast in silence. Song Ning kept looking at Ning Shu. Ning Shu wiped his mouth with a tissue and said to Song Ning, "If you have something to say, just say it." Song Ning's face was bitter. She supported her chin and said, "Gong Luo, last night when I said that I wanted to cancel the engagement, I was just joking. Don't take it seriously." Ning Shu nodded. "I know. The marriage between our two families isn't that simple." Song Ning's expression became even gloomier. Why was this person so stubborn? She had loved him for so many years in vain. After breakfast, Ning Shu went to work. He didn't have a clue about the mission, so he could only learn how to work. It was always good to learn more. But not long after, Song Ning walked in front of Ning Shu in an office lady's suit. Ning Shu looked at her. "From today onwards, I will be your secretary." Song Ning turned in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu asked, "Gong Luo, do I look good in a secretary's suit?" Ning Shu nodded. "Very good." Song Ning was the kind of person who had very good skin. The black suit on her made her skin look even fairer. The contrast of white and black made her look even more beautiful. Especially when she smiled, it made people's hearts tremble. Ning Shu chanted Amitabha in his heart. She was really beautiful. He couldn't understand why Gong Luo didn't like Song Ning. Song Ning looked at Ning Shu with a helpless expression. "If you don't think I look good, you don't have to be so perfunctory. You do look good." Ning Shu praised sincerely. Song Ning was speechless. "Sincere my ass." Chapter 411. Ning Shu thought it would be fine with Song Ning as his secretary, but after a while, the head secretary brought another secretary, and this secretary was actually Yuan. When he saw Yuan, Ning Shu felt uncomfortable. The plot actually sent Yuan to him. Nothing had happened between them that night. Song Ning also felt uncomfortable. Her eyes wandered between Ning Shu and Yuan. Could it be that they already had sex? Song Ning stomped her feet angrily. Why was Yuan still haunting him like a ghost? When the head secretary introduced Ning Shu to Yuan looked at Ning Shu and felt that this man was very familiar. She felt like she had seen him somewhere before. "From now on, you will be in charge of serving the CEOT, the head secretary said to Yuan. Yuan nodded, her eyes fixed on Ning Shu's face. Ning Shu lifted his eyelids and said coldly, "Have you seen enough?" Hearing this voice, Yuan finally remembered that this person was actually a gigolo. She thought he was a gigolo. Yuan wanted to find a hole to hide in because she really couldn't stand the jerk and her toxic best friend. She didn't stay in her original company and applied for a job at the Miyagi Group, but she didn't expect her future boss to be a gigolo. Yuan's face turned red. When she woke up this morning, there was no one by her bed. Yuan felt that she was too drunk and didn't feel anything. Now that she saw her gigolo boss, Anwan wanted to die. If there's nothing else, you can leave. Ning Shu waved his hand. He was having a headache. Song Ning's eyes were fixed on Anwan. When Anwan left, Song Ning asked Ning Shu, "Do you know her?" She acted as if she knew you. Ning Shu saw the hurt and wronged look on Song Ning's face and his head hurt even more. He said, "I don't know her." He didn't expect that as a man, he could enjoy the treatment of being surrounded by beautiful women. However, Ning Shu's heart was bitter. She didn't want it at all. Song Ning pouted and looked at Ning Shu. She reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck. She said in an aggrieved tone, "Ning Shu, you are my fiancé. You can only be mine." When Song Ning said this, her expression was domineering and she acted like a spoiled little girl. It was not repulsive at all. When he got closer, Ning Shu smelled the fragrance on Song Ning's body. It was not the fragrance of perfume, but more like the fragrance of a human body. It was a natural body fragrance, and her breath smelled like orchids. Ning Shu's heart trembled. She really was a top-quality woman. He couldn't understand why the original owner didn't like her so much. Ning Shu pulled Song Ning's hand away from his neck. Why couldn't they talk things out? You're the young miss of the Song family. Don't mess around here. You can't be a secretary. Ning Shu said helplessly. Song Ning's eyes flashed with speechlessness and gloominess. She couldn't understand why Gong Luo was so indifferent to her. Was it because she wasn't beautiful enough? Impossible. Of course I have to stay here to guard you, in case some vixen takes you away. Song Ning said again. Ning Shu was even more helpless. What vixen? How shameless must she be to go after a girl? Song Ning frowned. Her gaze swept over Ning Shu's face inch by inch. Suddenly, Ning Shu asked, Gong Luo, as your fiancé, I have the right to know if you like men. Ning Shu really wanted to say that he liked men. He felt that Song Ning was different from the Song Ning in the novel. In the novel, Song Ning saw her fiancé marry another woman and became so jealous that she turned evil. Naturally, she was destroyed by the male lead. However, he didn't expect Song Ning to be such a beautiful woman. The male lead was willing to lay his hands on her. Song Ning went out. She walked to the pantry and looked at Anwan, who was practicing making coffee. She sized her up. Song Ning pursed her lips. She was really ordinary. A very ordinary woman. Why did Gong Luo like this woman and not want such a good woman like her? He was fucking blind. Anwan felt that someone was sizing her up. She turned around and saw Song Ning's deep gaze. When she saw Song Ning, Anwan felt that she was very beautiful and felt inferior. She thought of her best friend. A beautiful and flirtatious woman seduced her boyfriend and even showed off in front of her. Song Ning smiled and sized Anwan up. Anwan felt that she was going to be stripped naked by the other party. This feeling was very unpleasant. Anwan greeted Song Ning and said, "Hello, I'm Anwan. Nice to meet you." Song Ning said, "Hello." The atmosphere suddenly became silent. Anwan picked up the coffee and said, "I'll go bring the coffee to the CEO first." She walked around Song Ning and went to the CEO's office. Song Ning looked at Anwan's back. She leaned against the wall and looked at Anwan's back. Her eyes were strange, and there was a cold smile on her lips. She ran her fingers through her hair. Standing in front of the carved door of the office, Anwan took a deep breath and then pushed the door open. She saw the man sitting in the office leather chair, looking carefully at the documents. He was wearing a well-tailored suit and had a handsome face. He looked like a god. Anwan wanted to die. She must have been out of her mind to treat this man as a gigolo. And they even had that kind of relationship. It was so awkward. Anwan placed the coffee on Ning Shu's table. She took a deep breath and said to Ning Shu, "Well, the CEO." Ning Shu turned to look at An. He saw that her face was extremely embarrassed. She was sweating and blushing. He asked, "What's the matter?" He really wanted to fire An. An grabbed her clothes with one hand and looked a little nervous. She said, "Well, about what happened last night, can you pretend that nothing happened?" Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu wiped his face and said, "If you're talking about treating me as a gigolo, I don't mind." An let out a sigh of relief and said, "Also, about the hotel." "The hotel?" Ning Shu looked at Anwan's face, which was so red that it was about to explode. He didn't know if it was from anger or embarrassment. Ning Shu's mind exploded. The veins on his forehead throbbed. He said speechlessly, "Don't tell me you think that we." Ning Shu pointed at himself and then at An. "You're thinking too much." Anwan's face immediately turned red, mixed with shame and indignation. She said angrily, "Don't talk about it anymore. Can you just forget about it?" The veins on Ning Shu's forehead throbbed again. "I think you're mistaken. Nothing happened between us." Yes, nothing happened." An let out a long breath. "Let's forget about each other." Ning Shu was speechless. "What the fuck?" Ning Shu gritted his teeth. Why was An so sure that something had happened between them? Ning Shu clearly remembered that he didn't take off Anwan's clothes. He left her in the hotel room and left. Could it be that someone took off her clothes later? Chapter 412. Ning Shu looked at An, who seemed to know what had happened between them and was trying to cover it up. It was as if she did not want her to mention it. Clearly, she wanted them to forget about it and act as if nothing had happened. Ning Shu rubbed his forehead and looked at An. "Nothing happened between us." "Yes, nothing happened." "Thank you," An said with a red face. "Ning Shu, nothing really happened between us." Ning Shu repeated, "We didn't have sex. I didn't do anything to you when I sent you to the hotel." An quickly nodded. Yes. Nothing. You didn't do anything to me." "Fuck." Ning Shu wanted to die. He raised his voice and said, "Nothing really happened between us." "Yes. I'm telling the truth." "Yes." Ning Shu, why? Why did he feel like he could not communicate with her? Ning Shu felt the fire in his heart rising. Ning Shu almost roared. "Don't tell me you didn't feel anything. Your clothes are on and there are no marks on your body. Why do you think something happened between us? Don't tease me, okay?" An frowned. That's right. Her virginity would hurt, but she did not feel anything. Could it be that nothing really happened? An looked at this handsome man and pursed her lips. She did not say anything and felt awkward. Then, "CEO, I'll go out first." An felt that the room was very hot. She was sweating all over and felt very uncomfortable. Ning Shu waved his hand and told her to leave quickly. Ning Shu did not know what to do with An now. The plot kept putting her and An together. It was really annoying. She might as well ignore it. Anyway, she did not have sex with An. She did not need to be responsible for her. Just like that. If it was the original Gong Luo, she might have fallen in love with the female lead because of this. But she definitely would not. She would never fall in love with a woman. But, maybe the powerful plot would make her fall in love with a woman. So cold. He had a premonition that he was going to bring the dog home. "CEO, these are the documents you need to sign." Not long after An left, Song Ning ran in again to make her presence known. Ning Shu looked at the beautiful Song Ning and felt his balls ache. Ning Shu reached out to take the document from Song Ning's hand, but Song Ning refused to let go. Ning Shu tried to pull away, but Song Ning refused to let go. He decided to just throw it away. Damn it, how could she be seduced by a woman? Don't joke around. Song Ning looked at Ning Shu and pouted. How boring. Ning Shu asked, what did you say to the secretary just now? You talked for so long. I'm jealous. Ning Shu was speechless. Tired sleep does not love. Ning Shu looked at Song Ning without saying a word. Song Ning's expression immediately became serious. She looked like a strong woman. Her style changed very quickly. Her appearance gave off a special charm that made men want to conquer her. Ning Shu said, you don't lack this salary, so don't make trouble here. Song Ning said with a serious face, Gong Luo, I want to have more opportunities to spend time with you. I want you to fall in love with me. If you can't, I'll choose to give up. We'll call off the engagement. That's good for both of us. Ning Shu was a little surprised by this girl's straightforwardness. He asked, how long do you plan to stay? Song Ning shrugged. It will take some time. I need enough time to confirm if you will fall in love with me. Damn, she was really making trouble. The female lead was already a headache, but this Song Ning was still making trouble. His head was about to explode. He really could not enjoy being surrounded by beauties. Ning Shu called the head secretary to the front and said directly, An Nguyen is not suitable for this job. Don't. The head secretary was stunned. He asked, CEO, is there anything you are not satisfied with about An's ability is not to be doubted. After all, she was carefully selected. She can still do the job of serving tea well. What was he not satisfied with? Ning Shu said stubbornly, I don't like her. The head secretary was speechless. Ning Shu was still looking at the documents when the office door suddenly opened. The sound was a little loud. Ning Shu looked at the door and saw An Nguyen rushing in front of him. She asked directly, CEO, today is my first day at work. Did I do anything wrong? You can't fire me for no reason. An Nguyen bit her lip and looked at Ning Shu seriously. CEO, I need a reason to be fired. Ning Shu said, I don't need a reason. You're fired. An Nguyen looked angry. What right do you have to be so arbitrary? I didn't do anything wrong. You're being unfair to me. Ning Shu looked at An Nguyen's serious expression and was speechless. I don't want you to be my secretary. Do you? An Nguyen bit her lip. Do you mind what happened last night? An Nguyen quickly waved her hand. I've never thought of asking you to take responsibility. Just pretend that nothing happened. I just want to work hard. CEO, don't worry. I won't tell anyone. Tell what? Ning Shu looked at An Nguyen in disbelief. I won't tell anyone that I mistook you for a prostitute and what happened at the hotel last night. I need this job. CEO, please be merciful. An Nguyen looked at Ning Shu with longing eyes. Ning Shu really wanted to bang his head against the wall. He didn't know what to say. Previously, he thought that they had made things clear. But now, it seemed that An Nguyen's mind was still not clear. She still thought that there was something between them. Ning Shu laughed coldly and didn't say anything. He looked at An Nguyen coldly. An Nguyen was a little frightened by Ning Shu's gaze. She was so scared that she shrank back. She mustered up her courage and said, You can't fire me. Otherwise, I'll expose it to the media. Expose what? Ning Shu asked curiously. Did An Nguyen have something on her? Absolutely not. An Nguyen looked at Ning Shu and said, I'll only tell you if you promise not to be angry. Then don't say anything. Get out. Go to the finance department to get your salary. Let's go. Ning Shu didn't want to talk nonsense with her. He didn't want to create any sparks of love. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't. An was choked. She took a deep breath and said, "If you hate me because of what happened last night, I apologize. But I really need this job." After being dumped by a scumbag, she left the company with a scumbag. It would take a long time to find a job. During this period of time without a job, she would have to eat dirt. An looked at Ning Shu with a look of desperation. She said angrily, "If you fire me, I'll expose to the media that you were a prostitute at a hotel last night." Ning Shu was speechless. This imagination of hers was enough to make one kneel down. An thought that she was a prostitute. Now, she actually wanted to expose her to the media and make her a prostitute. Chapter 413. Anwan's courage was really praiseworthy. Ning Shu's expression turned cold as he said mildly, "Are you going to expose me as a gigolo, and that you slept with a gigolo like me?" An pointed at Ning Shu. "You're the one who said it. Don't force me. Maybe I'll fight to the death." This was throwing an egg against a rock. Fight to the death. The veins on Ning Shu's forehead throbbed. He was speechless. According to the plot's development, shouldn't they have sex and let the female lead see the power of a gigolo? This ridiculous plot made Ning Shu want to cry. Ning Shu wiped his face and waved at An. "All right, say whatever you want. Go expose it. You." Anwan's hands and feet went numb from Ning Shu's unbridled behavior. She then said, "I told the media that I was pregnant with your child, and you abandoned me after having sex with me. Fuck, this female lead really did what she wanted. So willful." This was the plot. Nothing had happened between them before, and it was just the female lead's imagination. However, the female lead was already very willful in front of her. If it was another boss who wanted to fire the female lead, would the female lead be like this? When facing the male lead, she was full of confidence and felt that the male lead would compromise. No wonder Gong Luo always felt that she was abnormal, to the point that she was groveling for the female lead. In order to show the male lead's love for the female lead, she trampled the male lead into the mud. Although it was natural for a man to dote on his wife, in the plot, the male lead couldn't live without the female lead. After getting married, An wanted to divorce in all sorts of ways. When he heard An say divorce, Gong Luo would press An down and have sex with her for a while, then say evilly, "Can't I satisfy you? You just have to want a divorce." But all sorts of actions were also fun. Gong Luo was too strong. I couldn't take it. The next day, I held my sore waist and gritted my teeth to ask for a divorce. Gong Luo was cold and self-restrained. His IQ was definitely high. His position determined that he had to maintain a calm mind. However, in the plot, Gong Luo was a childish boy with no intelligence to speak of. His personality was so bad that it was as if he had been possessed. Ning Shu's expression turned cold. He looked at An and said, "So you're trying to blackmail me. What do you want? Do you want me to be responsible for you?" "I don't want you to be responsible for me. I just want to work, but you have to force me." An puffed out her chest, trying to make herself look more righteous. Ning Shu was speechless. "I'm fucking forcing you. This is my company. If I tell you to scram, you should scram. What kind of logic is this?" Especially when Ning Shu saw Anwan's aggrieved look, he felt like he was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. Did she think that he should give in to her just because they had slept together? Get lost. I don't want to see you. Did you say that you have a child or that I'm a gigolo? You can do whatever you want. Ning Shu couldn't bear to see An pestering him endlessly. He should let himself back down. What kind of logic was this? She didn't owe An anything at all. Actually, in essence, An had used her body in exchange for Gong Luo's endless love. "You slept with my body, so you should treat me well." You have to treat me well. Although it was called love, it was also Gong Luo who had been giving. In the name of love, it was reasonable for her to give in whatever she did. An stared blankly at the cold and heartless Ning Shu and complained, "I've never seen someone as cold-blooded as you. Despicable capitalist, I didn't do anything wrong at all and you want to fire me. I signed a contract when I entered the company. What you're doing is illegal. I'm going to expose you for exploiting workers." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu didn't know how Gong Luo managed to hold it in, but she really couldn't hold it in anymore. He also saw how powerful the plot was. It would always involve the two of them together. Ning Shu got up from his chair and walked in front of An. He looked down at the trembling An from above. This man's aura was really too strong. An couldn't help but take a step back to reduce her fear of this man. An felt wronged. She felt that the CEO today was different from the CEO yesterday. He was so cold today. But she needed this job too much. She had many younger brothers at home who were in university. Also, she didn't want to be looked down upon by that adulterous couple. She couldn't let them see that she didn't even have a job. She didn't even have a career. An felt that she was very pitiful. Right now, she only wanted to work seriously, but she met such a boss. An felt that she should go burn incense. She was too unlucky. You really want to stay in the company? Ning Shu looked at An and asked with a smile. An saw the smile on Ning Shu's face and instinctively felt that something was wrong. This black-bellied big bad wolf smile was the detestable smile of an exploiter. An straightened her back and said with a trembling voice, "As long as you let me stay in the company, I'll do anything you want me to." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu felt very bored. An was acting as if he was a big villain, a big pervert who wanted her to give herself to him. Ning Shu expressed that he didn't want to be with girls. An saw that the CEO was staring at her with a deep and calm gaze that made her heart tremble. She hurriedly said, "Let's make this clear first. You can't force me to sell my body." Ning Shu's face twitched and he said directly, "Since you want to stay in the company, then stay in the company. Go do the cleaning. When I'm in a good mood, I'll let you come back to be my secretary." Do cleaning? Did that mean that he wanted her to mop the floor and clean the toilets? An was stunned. She looked at Ning Shu in a daze. "You want me to mop the floor?" Ning Shu said, "Not only do you have to mop the floor, but the glass doors and windows of the company have to be wiped clean. The water in the toilets must be clean enough to drink." An was speechless. An was furious. This man was deliberately making things difficult for her. She didn't do anything wrong, so why did he hate her so much? Ning Shu thought it through. He wouldn't chase An away. Based on the plot, An would definitely be sent to his side. Perhaps the next time, it would be more intense methods, such as Chinese medicine, which required a woman to have sex with him to relieve the effects. And the person he would be having sex with might be An. In any case, he had to get An and him into bed. Only then would they be able to develop feelings for each other. What a world with broken moral principles. You don't want to be a cleaner? Fine, then you can leave the company, Ning Shu said coldly. What a bad guy. An glared at Ning Shu. So be it. I know you hate me and want to use this method to chase me away, but I won't let you get what you want. Fine, then please leave. Close the office door and report to the cleaning department. Ning Shu sat on the chair and didn't even look at An. An took a deep breath. She glanced at Ning Shu and turned to leave the office. She almost didn't let her tears fall. Her expression was very stubborn. Chapter 4:14. Ning Shu chased An to the cleaning department. Without An by his side, Ning Shu suddenly felt that the whole sky was bright. He kept feeling uncomfortable. He was a cute girl, but he actually had to do that with a girl. The plot was like a tiger watching its prey, always wanting to get them on the bed. Just thinking about that scene made him want to vomit blood. You must stay calm, my moral integrity. Why are you looking at me like that? Ning Shu looked at Song Ning, who was in an office lady's suit, sitting on the sofa. She supported her chin and looked at Ning Shu in confusion. She looked confused, but she gave off a very flirtatious feeling. Song Ning narrowed her eyes and asked, "How did An offend you? You want her to clean the toilet?" Song Ning was really confused. She looked at Ning Shu with a questioning and sharp gaze. Song Ning was really confused. Shouldn't Gong Luo dote on An and put the whole world in her hands? What was going on now? Song Ning's gaze scraped across Ning Shu's face inch by inch. It was very sharp. Ning Shu's expression was very cold. He said calmly, "She disobeyed me. This is her punishment." Song Ning made an "oh" sound. So he was sulking. Every time Song Ning saw Gong Luo, this man, he was so stubborn. He was expressionless as if he had facial paralysis. He would only have an expression when he was with An. Song Ning was very unhappy. She really didn't understand what was so good about An. Love was really unreasonable. She didn't know if anything had happened between Gong Luo and An. "Gong Luo, can I ask you something?" Song Ning asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Song Ning. Ning Shu was a little confused. He felt that there was something wrong with this Song Ning. "What is it?" Ning Shu's face was tense. "You're here to work, not to chat. If you're going to be like this, you can go back." Song Ning walked to the desk and slammed her hands on it. She tilted her body and looked into Ning Shu's eyes. Ning Shu looked at the cleavage under Song Ning's shirt. It was white and full, like a big steamed bun. It made him want to grab it. Ning Shu took a deep breath. This Song Ning was always trying to seduce him. Ning Shu felt like he couldn't control himself anymore. Oh, he, Song Ning's temperament was ever-changing. She was like a little vixen. This kind of woman was much more interesting than An. Once again, she felt sorry for the male lead's taste. However, once the male lead had someone in mind, his eyes could no longer see anyone else. In his eyes, An was the most beautiful. Everyone else was either ugly or a femme fatale. Ning Shu lowered his eyes and didn't look at Song Ning. "Gong Luo, tell me honestly. Do you have anything to do with An? Or is An actually your little sweetheart? As your fiancé, I have the right to know. At our level, I won't say anything if you want to play around. However, if you don't interfere with the cooperation between our two families, then I won't agree." Ning Shu was silent. He crossed his fingers and looked at Song Ning. "Why do you think there's something between me and An? Or did you send someone to follow me?" Looking at Song Ning's expression, she seemed to know that there was something between him and An. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes slightly and swept his gaze over Song Ning's face. He looked at Song Ning's face carefully and felt that it was breathtaking. The more he looked at her, the more beautiful she became. A face that could enchant people's hearts. The way the corners of her lips curled up slightly made people feel that she was the most beautiful existence in the world. "I didn't send someone to follow you. I was just on guard." Song Ning looked at Ning Shu and smiled. "A lot of pocketbooks say that men like you like women like An, who's like plain porridge and side dishes. I don't think there's anything wrong with my guard." Song Ning flipped her hair and met Ning Shu's eyes. "You're my fiancé. You can only be mine." Song Ning's eyes seemed to have infinite bright stars in them. They were so beautiful that it made people's hearts palpitate. Ning Shu instantly felt as if there were fireworks exploding in his mind. It was extremely gorgeous. Ning Shu quickly shook his head. Damn, he was actually mesmerized by a woman. What the fuck? The halo of calmness flowed into Ning Shu's heart. Only then did Ning Shu's heart calm down. That strange throbbing was then suppressed. Ning Shu felt sweat break out on his back. His face was a little pale. He looked at Song Ning without a change in expression. You don't have to worry about my matters. I know what I'm doing. You. Song Ning bit her lips and frowned. She turned around and left in anger. Her back was full of anger and sadness. It made one's heart ache. Once Song Ning left, Ning Shu let out a long breath and wiped the cold sweat off his head. He realized that a person's charm had reached the point where both men and women were attracted to her. Ning Shu was a little suspicious of Song Ning. It was impossible that she couldn't catch Gong Luo with such means. So annoying. Ning Shu planned to go to the toilet. When he reached the toilet, he instinctively walked to the female toilet. When he saw a female employee in a cleaning uniform, Ning Shu reacted and quickly turned around to leave the female toilet. Ah, you pervert. You actually went into the female toilet. Ning Shu originally wanted to apologize, but when he turned around, he saw An Wan in a cleaning uniform. She was wearing a mask and holding a mop in her hand. She was glaring at Ning Shu angrily. How could he meet her like this? Ning Shu wiped his face. He didn't want to say anything and turned to leave the female toilet. An Wan shouted, You pervert. You actually went into the female toilet. If I meet you, I'll definitely not let you off. An Wan said as she swung the mop at Ning Shu. You look well dressed, but you're actually a beast in human clothing. Ning Shu dodged An Wan's mop, but the dirty water on the mop still splashed onto his trousers. Are you crazy? You're the crazy pervert. You still think you're in the right when you go into the female toilet. An Wan held the mop dripping with water like a female warrior. Then, she evilly splashed the water on Ning Shu's shiny black leather shoes. Ning Shu was speechless. Do you want to die? Ning Shu looked at An Wan indifferently. An Wan laughed happily and said loudly, I have more dirt on you now. You're actually a pervert who goes into the female toilet. I'm warning you, you'd better be polite to me. Otherwise, I'll spread this news. The CEO of the Miyagi Group, Gong Luo, is a pervert. Ning Shu was speechless. Did she have to use this kind of plot to tie the two of them together? Why did An Wan think that he should be threatened by her? The female lead's world was simple and black and white. With this kind of personality, who knew how many people she would offend? Ning Shu turned to leave. The more he competed, the more tired he would be. Especially when he was competing with someone like the female lead who was pure, innocent, and sweet. It was even more tiring. An Wan saw that Ning Shu was about to escape, so she held the mop and opened her arms to block Ning Shu's path. She raised her head and looked at Ning Shu. You can't leave. You're blocking me in front of the female toilet. Do you want to do something to me? Ning Shu looked down at An Wan. Chapter 4:15. Huh, you dragged me to the ladies' room because you wanted to do something to me. How dare you accuse me of entering the ladies' room as a pervert? Ning Shu sneered. Get lost. If you block my way again, I'll kick you. An Wan was instantly enraged. She looked at Ning Shu in disbelief. How can you be so shameless? You're shameless. You were the one who entered the ladies' room. How dare you accuse me of wanting to do something to you? An Wan was so angry that she was about to cry. However, Ning Shu felt that An Wan's reaction was too extreme. This was the plot. It wanted the two of them to be entangled with each other. Even if she had unconsciously entered the wrong room, such a thing would have happened. Ning Shu pushed An Wan away. Get lost. Don't block my way. An was accidentally pushed to the ground by Ning Shu. She groaned in pain. Ning Shu saw An fall to the ground. Her eyes were filled with tears and she looked at him with hatred. Ning Shu suppressed his urge to help An up and went into the men's room next door. After peeing, Ning Shu came out of the toilet. He saw An still sitting on the ground and wiping her tears. Ning Shu knew that even if he helped An up out of kindness, An wouldn't appreciate it. Were she and An going to become quarrelsome lovers now? No matter what, An would always appear in front of her to attract her attention. Ning Shu strode past An without looking sideways. An looked at Ning Shu's back and pursed her lips. She muttered, "What a bad guy." Ning Shu felt that the plot was really fucked up. When An became a secretary, he had to face her all the time. Now that An had become a cleaner, Ning Shu could bump into her at any time. An even had to clean the CEO's office. It was really fucked up. Ning Shu expressed that there was nothing worse than this, especially when he had a fiancée with boundless charm who was attractive to both men and women. He still had to resist his restless heart. It was simply too hard to bear. Bang! The large vase on the floor in the office was smashed into pieces. An, who was wiping the dust with a handkerchief, was dumbfounded. She hurriedly apologized to Ning Shu, "CEO, I didn't do it on purpose. I really didn't do it on purpose." Ning Shu took a deep breath, wiped his face, and waved his hand. "Get out." Ning Shu couldn't figure out why the cleaning department would let An clean the CEO's office. Especially since An had just joined the cleaning department. Why would she be given such an important job? There was no need to explain. This was the plot. Ning Shu felt very tired. Song Ning crossed her arms as she watched the scene unfold. Her lips curled into a faint smile. She couldn't understand why Gong Luo would like and pamper such a girl so much. Thinking of this, Song Ning's eyes flashed with gloom. An hurriedly apologized to Ning Shu. "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I really didn't do it on purpose. Deduct this vase from my salary." Ning Shu wanted to wipe his face again. He was in the midst of a beautiful love story, but it drove him crazy. "You've only been working for a few days. How much salary can you get? Why can't you leave the Gong Corporation?" Song Ning looked at An and asked. "You can't even buy this vase with a year's salary." An opened her mouth in shock. She looked at the broken pieces on the floor. "Why is it so expensive?" An picked up the broken pieces with her bare hands and said, "I really didn't do it on purpose." An's finger was cut by the broken pieces of the vase and was bleeding. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu sighed deeply. What kind of situation was this? Was she trying to make him feel sorry for An? The plot was really everywhere. Song Ning took the paper and pressed it on An's bleeding finger. She said calmly, "Get out." But An looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu waved his hand and didn't even look at An. An left in disappointment. Ning Shu looked at the broken pieces and blood on the floor and shook his head. Song Ning walked over and looked at Ning Shu. She asked, "What's wrong? Do you feel sorry for her?" "I'm off work. I'll leave first." Ning Shu picked up his suit jacket and left. Song Ning looked at the man's back and felt that this man was the most determined person she had ever met. He was actually so indifferent to her. Did he like An that much? Song Ning slapped her face. This was really. Ning Shu left the office and went to the garage to start his car. The car had just gotten onto the road when a figure suddenly walked towards the front of his car. Ning Shu quickly braked and jumped in fright. Fuck, who was the one who didn't want to live? Ning Shu opened the car door and saw An sitting in front of the car with a pale face. She looked as if she was still scared. Ning Shu felt that his patience had reached its limit. Why did he run into this woman everywhere? The plot was quite intense. What are you doing? Ning Shu took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. His heart was full of curses. Anwan turned her head and looked at Ning Shu. Her eyes trembled as she said, "CEO, I didn't do it on purpose. I was thinking about something and really didn't notice." Anwan tried to stand up with difficulty, but she seemed to have sprained her leg. She cried out in pain. Ning Shu was speechless. Could he just leave this female lead who had sprained her leg? He felt that he could run into Anwan anytime and anywhere in the day. It was really annoying. "Are you okay?" Ning Shu asked Anwan. Anwan quickly waved her hand and said, "I'm fine. I'm fine." Ning Shu nodded. "It's good that you're fine." Ning Shu turned around and wanted to get into the car and leave. CEO, wait a minute." Anwan limped over to Ning Shu. The veins on Ning Shu's forehead throbbed. He asked, "Is there anything else? Do you need medical fees?" Anwan's face suddenly turned serious. "I don't want your money." Ning Shu's lips curled up. "Don't be angry. Smile. You must be calm." Ning Shu smiled and asked Anwan, "I don't want money. Is there anything else?" Anwan said, "About the vase, I'll find a way to compensate you. It was my fault. I was careless. I just hope you won't chase me out of the company." Ning Shu said patiently, "Why? This vase is very valuable. Your 1 year's salary is not enough. As long as you leave the company, you won't have to pay for it." It was the first time Anwan had seen this man talk so much to her. He was usually impatient with her. Anwan was not used to it. She shook her head and said, "I can't leave the company." Ning Shu, why? Why? Ning Shu said helplessly. He really couldn't understand what the female lead was thinking. Anwan said, "I need this job. My brother is in college, and I have to send money home every month." Ning Shu moved his neck and said, "But you have to pay for the vase. Your 1 year's salary will be gone. It's like you worked for free for a year. You can quit and find another job." Anwan shook her head again. "I can't leave the company." Ning Shu was speechless. Damn it. The topic kept repeating itself. Chapter 4:16. Ning Shu and Anwan's conversation reached a dead end. "You can leave the company." "No, I can't leave the company because I need this job." "You can find another job. You don't have the money to pay for a vase." "No, I can't leave the company." "Why can't you leave the company?" "I just can't leave the company. The scumbag will look down on me." Ning Shu wiped his face and took out money from his bag to give to Anwan. Anwan was unhappy. Ning Shu said, "This money is for you to take a taxi to the hospital to have your leg checked." "I don't want it. I don't want it." Anwan turned and limped away. Ning Shu didn't bother to look at Anwan. He got into the car and went back to his villa. The villa was brightly lit. Ning Shu opened the door and smelled the aroma of food. Ning Shu took off his slippers and walked to the kitchen door. He saw Song Ning with a scarf around her neck, cooking. Even when she was cooking, Song Ning was still beautiful. The atmosphere was warm. "You're back." Song Ning smiled and asked Ning Shu, "You left before me. Why did you come home later than me?" Ning Shu leaned against the door and looked at Song Ning's face. Her smile was really charming. "Why are you still here? What are you doing at my house?" "Ning Shu, are you blind? Didn't you see me cooking?" Song Ning rolled her eyes at Ning Shu. She reached out her hand and said, "Give me a plate." Ning Shu opened the cupboard and took out a plate for Song Ning. Song Ning put the food on the plate and said, "Bring it to the table." Ning Shu nodded and brought the food to the table. After a short while, 4 dishes and a soup were ready. They were all very home-cooked dishes, and they looked, smelled, and tasted good. Ning Shu was amazed by his cooking skills, because she couldn't make such dishes. Song Ning took off her scarf and sat opposite Ning Shu. She said, "Eat. Try my cooking." Ning Shu tasted every dish and praised sincerely, "It's really delicious. Your cooking is really good." Ning Shu's praise didn't make Song Ning happy. Instead, her face darkened. She pursed her lips and didn't say anything. "You can cook." It was surprising that a young lady like Song Ning, who had never done any household chores, knew how to cook. Song Ning used her chopsticks to poke at the rice in her bowl. She curled her lips and said, "Haven't you heard that if you want to capture a man's heart, you have to capture his stomach first? I have practiced cooking for a long time, but I still can't capture your stomach." Ning Shu was speechless. She felt like she was being flirted with again. Damn, Ning Shu thought he might be gay after being flirted with by a beauty like Song Ning every day. Absolutely not. Oh my god, Ning Shu felt that her moral integrity was about to collapse. In the face of Song Ning's complaints, Ning Shu didn't say anything. He ate in silence. Song Ning furrowed her brows. Was he still a man? Could he only be in one? She didn't believe it. Song Ning rested her chin on her hand. She looked at Ning Shu and said, "Give me a piece of the stir-fried lettuce in front of you. Why don't you get it yourself?" Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Song Ning. "Because I can't reach it," Song Ning said matter-of-factly. How could she not be able to reach it? Ning Shu looked at the flirtatious Song Ning and pushed the plate of stir-fried lettuce in front of her. Song Ning was speechless. What a boring man. Why was he so different when he was with N1? Song Ning's face grew worse. Seeing that Ning Shu only cared about eating, Song Ning's mood worsened. She put her chopsticks on the table and rested her chin on her hand as she looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu couldn't take it when a woman looked at him with such seductive eyes. "Song Ning, what is your goal?" Ning Shu asked directly. Song Ning twirled her hair with her fingers and said matter-of-factly, "Of course, it is to make you fall in love with me. After all, we are engaged. Since we are destined to get married, it is better that we fall in love. Then, our married life will be happier. I am a woman. Of course, I need a warm family. Rather than the two of us being strangers after we get married, why don't we try to fall in love with each other now?" Song Ning said generously. Ning Shu suddenly didn't know how to refute because what Song Ning said made sense. "But, until now, I have realized that you haven't fallen in love with me," Song Ning said in distress. "Is it that difficult to like me?" "Difficult, very difficult." Ning Shu said he didn't want to be a lesbian. "What's wrong with me?" Song Ning looked at Ning Shu. "Am I not pretty enough?" Ning Shu shook his head and said, "You are very beautiful. But why don't you like me?" Song Ning was speechless. "I can be in the hall, and I can be in the kitchen. What are you not satisfied with? I am a fucking girl, and you are a girl too. How could we be together?" When the mission was completed, Ning Shu would leave. As for the relationship between Song Ning and the original owner of the body, it had nothing to do with him. Ning Shu wouldn't make decisions for the original owner of the body when it came to matters of love. He had no right to make decisions for the original owner of the body. "Forget it. I am not eating. Your attitude displeases me." Song Ning stood up and sat on the sofa, ignoring Ning Shu. Ning Shu shrugged. He saw that there was still food on the plate. Ning Shu had finished it all. It was shameful to waste food. "I am not going back today. I will stay here. When I have enough, I will leave," Song Ning said unhappily. Ning Shu didn't say anything. If you want to stay, then stay. Song Ning saw that Ning Shu had gone upstairs and was ignoring her. She wrinkled her nose in annoyance. After taking a shower, Ning Shu lay on the spacious bed and stared at the white ceiling. He was thinking about the mission in his heart. This mission was simply too troublesome. Moreover, with the fate between him and Yuan, they would always bump into each other. There might even be some kind of pink bubble scene that would appear. Sigh, what a cruel life. Ning Shu was about to close his eyes when there was a knock on the door. Ning Shu rolled his eyes and got off the bed to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, Ning Shu saw Song Ning barefoot and wearing a nightgown. Song Ning's hair was loose, and her long black hair was slightly curly like seaweed. It was very charming. Under the nightgown was a pair of flawless white thighs. Her enchanting figure was very attractive. Why was she knocking on the door dressed like that? It couldn't be what he thought it was, right? Ning Shu swallowed her saliva and asked, "What's the matter?" Song Ning pushed Ning Shu away and walked into the room barefoot. She sat on the bed and looked at Ning Shu. "What do you think?" "I think we shouldn't be like this." Ning Shu looked at Song Ning and didn't say anything. Both of them wanted to fuck him. Please let them go. Sex before marriage is very important. I want to see if you can do it. Didn't people say that sex is the main reason for divorce? Song Ning said with a charming expression. She was like a seductive vixen. According to the normal development, she should have just said, "Don't ever say that men can't do it. I want to show you if I can do it." Then, she would have done it. Damn, what should I do? It was so embarrassing. When she was the female lead, there were always men who wanted to fuck her. When she was the male lead, there were always women who wanted to fuck her. Actually, the male lead was also very miserable. Chapter 4:17. Ning Shu pursed his lips and looked at the seductive little vixen at the door. The veins on his forehead bulged. It was so awkward, but he still had to maintain a smile. "Are you sure?" He looked at Song Ning and asked, "Are you sure you want to?" Song Ning stood up and walked in front of Ning Shu. She reached out and poked Ning Shu's chest. "We're all adults. What do you think?" Ning Shu smiled and grabbed Song Ning's white, jade-like fingers. He looked at her fingers carefully. They were slender and beautiful. Every finger seemed to have been carefully polished. She was really a beautiful woman. Seeing Ning Shu so focused, Song Ning Shu's heart couldn't help but throb. Song Ning's heart skipped a beat uncontrollably. This man was really handsome. Ning Shu let go of Song Ning's fingers and turned to touch Song Ning's arm. It was as if she was touching a piece of warm and smooth white jade. It was indescribably moving. Ning Shu's heart uncontrollably spasmed. Song Ning's face flushed red. She looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of love. Ning Shu looked into Song Ning's eyes. He felt that this woman loved him very much. It was as if he was the most important person in her life. He was worthy of her trust and love. Their hearts were connected. Ning Shu grabbed Song Ning's arm and pulled her out of the room. He said calmly, "I don't want to talk to you." Song Ning's face froze. She was in disbelief and anger. Her expression was strange. "Are you a man?" Song Ning didn't know what to say. Did Gong Luo really like Yuan that much? Did he want to keep his chastity for Yuan? Song Ning was furious. She reached out and grabbed Ning Shu's clothes. She said fiercely, "Are you a man or not? Or are you saying you can't do it? I'm going to pounce on you today and make you mine." Song Ning said as she stood on her tiptoes to kiss Ning Shu. Fuck, this was too much. Ning Shu put his hand on Song Ning's face and said, "Go to sleep. Don't think about anything else." Then, Ning Shu slammed the door shut. Song Ning's nose was almost flattened by the door. Song Ning rubbed her nose and sneered. She crossed her arms and walked away. Ning Shu shook her head and lay down on the bed to sleep. This wasn't her body. She was here to complete a mission. She didn't have the right to use the client's body to do anything out of line, and she definitely couldn't cause any trouble for the client. Especially when it came to matters of the heart, Ning Shu didn't dare to cross the line. He couldn't be greedy for momentary pleasure and complicate things. As for his fiancée, Song Ning, he would have to wait for the original owner, Gong Luo, to come back and deal with her. The next day, Ning Shu woke up and went downstairs. He didn't see Song Ning, so he asked Auntie Li, "Where is Miss Song?" Miss Song left early in the morning. Auntie Li poured a glass of milk for Ning Shu. She left early in the morning. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. It seemed that what happened last night made Song Ning angry. Ning Shu shrugged. She left, so be it. It was better if she didn't hang around in front of him. She wasn't a real man. Ning Shu drove to the company to pick her up. As soon as she entered the company, a figure bumped into her arms. Ning Shu quickly pushed the person away. It was An in her cleaning uniform again. An was mopping the floor and didn't notice the person beside her. She accidentally bumped into the person who was rude and almost pushed her. "Why are you, like this?" An immediately scolded. When she turned her head and saw that it was Ning Shu, she immediately shushed him and lowered her head. Ning Shu said calmly, "Be careful when you're cleaning. Can you take responsibility if you bump into a client?" An pouted and said, "I didn't do it on purpose." "Why are you so fierce?" "Am I fierce?" "I'm just stating the facts," Ning Shu said helplessly. An nodded and Ning Shu left. An caught up with Ning Shu and asked, "CEO, you won't fire me, right?" Ning Shu said, "Since you want to stay in the company, then stay. Remember, you have to pay for the vase." "I know. Thank you. I'll pay for the vase." An suddenly smiled. Seeing An like this, Ning Shu really wanted to facepalm. When he entered the office, he saw Song Ning, who was in her office attire, organizing documents. Everything in the office was neat and tidy. Ning Shu thought that Song Ning had left the company, but he didn't expect her to come so early. Morning, Ning Shu greeted Song Ning. Song Ning's expression was calm. She said seriously and coldly, "Morning, CEO." Then she brushed past Ning Shu like a stranger and left. She was so passionate yesterday, but today she was so cold. He really couldn't get used to it. She was really fickle. She was probably still angry about what happened last night. Ning Shu didn't think he did anything wrong. Song Ning's anger had nothing to do with him. After that, Song Ning showed the demeanor of a strong woman. She took care of everything. Ning Shu didn't say anything, but Song Ning could understand what he was thinking. She was really capable. But she was very cold to him. She looked serious and treated him like a boss. Ning Shu shrugged and didn't care at all. It was best to be cold like this. He couldn't stand it when she kept flirting with him. With Song Ning by his side, Ning Shu's work was much easier. Facing a mountain of documents, Song Ning could distinguish the important and urgent documents and the ones that could be delayed. This made Ning Shu's work more organized and easier. Song Ning looked at Ning Shu's indifferent expression. She bit her lips tightly. She looked at Ning Shu's eyes with indifference and indignation. Ning Shu ignored Song Ning, who was as cold as ice. She was thinking about the mission. Looking at An mopping the floor and wiping the coffee table, Ning Shu felt that he should think of a way to cut off the practice between the original owner and An. Ning Shu didn't expect that he would have to do something like this one day. Breaking up the couple. An, who was wiping the glass, kept feeling a burning gaze on her. She followed the gaze and met the CEO's meaningful gaze. Anwan's heart thumped. What was wrong with this person? Why did he keep staring at her? Could it be that he was thinking of firing her? Song Ning saw that Ning Shu was staring at Anwan and couldn't help but roll her eyes. Why did Gong Luo like Anwan so much? Song Ning's shoulders slumped. This was so boring. After work, Ning Shu returned to the villa. He didn't see Song Ning and didn't see her cooking. He asked Auntie Li, "Where's Miss Song?" Auntie Li said, "Miss Song went back. She already packed her luggage." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. What was going on? Ning Shu didn't care at all. Anwan was already a headache. It was good that Song Ning left. After going to work, Ning Shu didn't see Song Ning in her suit. He looked around but didn't see her. Chapter 418. Usually, Song Ning would hang around in front of Ning Shu whenever she had nothing to do. Now that Song Ning suddenly stopped coming, Ning Shu was really happy. Secretary Ning Shu asked, "Where is Miss Song?" "Miss Song won't be coming today," the secretary said. Ning Shu was even happier and asked, "She won't be coming in the future?" The secretary looked at Ning Shu's beaming face and said, "President, Miss Song is sick. Do you want to go and see her?" "Yes, I'll find time to go and see her." Ning Shu went into the office and saw Anwan cleaning the office. Ning Shu saw her every day. He rubbed his forehead. The plot always brought them together. He always felt that Anwan was cleaning the place where he appeared. Anwan felt that the president was looking at her. Every time he looked at her with such a passionate gaze, it made Anwan feel very anxious. There was an indescribable fear and heartbeat. Ning Shu sat on the sofa and looked at Anwan. There was nothing wrong with Anwan. She was a girl who was favored by God, and then God arranged for a domineering president to fall in love with her and then spoil her. She was very ordinary and had no outstanding ability. She must have done a lot of good in her previous life to be able to meet a man like Gong Luo in this life. She didn't need to struggle to reach the peak of life. Marriage was a woman's second life. Love was a matter between two people, but Gong Luo felt that he was being controlled. This feeling made Gong Luo feel uncomfortable. Love was the feeling of a man and a woman interacting with each other. But in this relationship, Gong Luo gave a lot, and Anwan enjoyed Gong Luo's love. Even when there was a conflict, Gong Luo was the first to bow down. Anwan couldn't bear Ning Shu's gaze anymore. She gathered her courage and turned around to say to Ning Shu, "Why are you looking at me like that? Are you plotting something? I'll pay for the vase." Ning Shu leaned back and looked at Anwan. He said aloud, "Why do you have to be in my company? I can introduce you to a position in other companies." Anwan held the handkerchief in her hand and said, "Other companies may not want me." "Scumbag, no, my ex-boyfriend is very rich. He will deliberately cause trouble for me. I may be fired if I go to other companies. Fuck, this plot is so fucked up." He wanted Anwan to take root in the Miyagi Corporation. Ning Shu's face twitched. He didn't know what to say, so he waved his hand at Anwan. "Get out." Anwan nodded and went out obediently. When she reached the door, she stopped, turned around, and said to Ning Shu, "CEO, I feel like you hate me. Is that so?" Ning Shu said casually. Anwan said tactfully, "In the future, I'll appear less in front of you. I'll clean the office when you're not in the office." Ning Shu grunted and did not express any opinion. Anwan felt an indescribable sense of loss in her heart. She asked Ning Shu, "I heard that Miss Song Ning is your fiancée." "Aha." Ning Shu nodded. Anwan suddenly didn't know what to say. She looked at the man sitting on the sofa, noble and proud. Her heart couldn't help but twitch because this man's face was enough to charm anyone, men and women alike. You can go out. Ning Shu waved his hand. Anwan turned and walked out of the office. Ning Shu unbuttoned his suit, took off his jacket, and began to work. Then he realized that without Song Ning by his side, it was very difficult to work. He was used to a relaxed work environment, but now he was not used to it. Ning Shu shook his head. That was why he had to rely on himself for everything. Once he relied on others, it would become a habit, and it would be his own destruction. Song Ning really understood people's hearts. She invaded his life and work in a way that penetrated the stone with dripping water. Now that she was suddenly not by his side, Ning Shu felt awkward and inconvenient. Song Ning had this ability, so why would she lose to one who didn't have any ability? This didn't make sense. After finishing his work, Ning Shu felt that he had to go and see Song Ning. When he reached the hospital ward, Ning Shu saw Song Ning's pale face. Her small face looked very delicate. Compared to her usual enchanting appearance, Song Ning was very weak now. She was like a child who had taken off her disguise, revealing her innermost nature. It made one's heart ache for her. Ning Shu didn't expect Song Ning to really be sick, and it seemed to be quite serious. He reached out his hand and placed it on Song Ning's forehead. You have a low fever. What's wrong? Song Ning coughed and rolled her eyes at Ning Shu. I have a cold. I'm sick. I have a serious cold. Ning Shu could only say, rest well. Song Ning's face darkened. Her eyes lost their light. She reached out her hand and grabbed Ning Shu's finger. She was like a child grabbing onto Ning Shu's finger. This action brought a sense of uneasiness and dependence. Ning Shu sat by the bed. Don't think too much. Rest well. Song Ning grabbed onto Ning Shu's finger tightly and said in a low voice, Ning Shu, is it really that difficult to give your heart to me? Difficult, very difficult. Ning Shu wouldn't give his heart to someone else. If his heart wasn't with her, would she still be herself? Would she still be able to calmly complete her mission? Her life wasn't even guaranteed. Moreover, giving his heart to a woman was even more ridiculous. Ning Shu said lightly, why do you want my heart? Isn't it good that we're like this? What good? I can't hold on to my heart anymore. That's why I want yours. Song Ning's expression was pitiful. We're engaged. What's wrong with loving each other? The veins on Ning Shu's forehead throbbed. His heart was filled with curses. I don't want to lie to you. I won't fall in love with you. Ning Shu pried Song Ning's finger away. He felt a little apologetic. Song Ning's pale face twitched. Her eyebrows furrowed in anger and unwillingness, but it disappeared in an instant. She still looked pitiful. Ning Shu comforted Song Ning and wanted to leave. She couldn't fall in love with a woman now. She could only avoid Song Ning. As for this kind of relationship, she would leave it to the original owner to deal with. Moreover, this Song Ning was really charming. As a woman, she felt her heart skip a beat. Her charm was irresistible. Don't go. Don't go. Song Ning lifted the blanket and pulled out the 4-needle from the back of her hand. She stood barefoot in front of Ning Shu. Is it really that hard to make you fall in love with me? Ning Shu rubbed his forehead. Is it really that easy to fall in love? Can you fall in love just like that? Why are you in such a hurry to make me fall in love with you? Ning Shu frowned. He looked down at Song Ning. After all, they were engaged. With this layer of relationship, it was possible to slowly develop feelings for each other. But why was Song Ning in such a hurry? Song Ning's face froze. She said, because I'm in love with you. That's why I'm in such a hurry to get your response. I'm restless and anxious. That's why I'm in such a hurry. Chapter 419. Gong Luo, can you understand how I feel? Song Ning reached out and grabbed Ning Shu's shirt sleeve. She gripped it so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She was trembling slightly, making one's heart ache. Ning Shu felt a headache coming on. How was he supposed to respond to Song Ning's feelings? Song Ning loved Gong Luo, not her. But now, Song Ning wanted him to give his heart to her. This heart was hers, not Gong Luo's. Song Ning, rest well. I'm leaving. Ning Shu pushed Song Ning's hand away and walked out of the ward. Gong Luo, how can you be so cruel to me? Song Ning's weak voice rang out in the ward. Seeing Ning Shu leave without looking back, Song Ning was so angry that she jumped up. She had never been so defeated before. It made Song Ning very angry. After leaving the hospital, Ning Shu felt that he was really sick. He couldn't wait to avoid Song Ning. Why did he get close to her? When he returned to the company, a figure knelt in front of him as soon as he walked into the office. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to maintain his calm image, Ning Shu would have jumped up in fright. Ning Shu took a closer look and saw An kneeling in front of him, crying. Her face was as pale as a ghost, and her hair was a little messy. She was as pathetic as could be. Ning Shu suddenly had a bad feeling. What was the plot trying to do? What? Ning Shu's voice was sullen. He strode to the sofa and sat on it. What's the matter? An knelt in front of Ning Shu and begged Ning Shu while crying, CEO, please help me. I beg you. What kind of trouble was this? Ning Shu rubbed his forehead impatiently. An saw that Ning Shu was silent and quickly kowtowed and begged, CEO, I beg you. I beg you. What's the matter? Ning Shu said calmly. CEO, can you lend me 500,000? An also felt that her request was a little too much, but she had no other choice. Now, she had to sell herself to repay her debt. How bitter, but she still had to maintain a smile. Ning Shu asked, what for? My brother, he. Anwan's tears streamed down her face and fell onto the ground. She fainted on the ground, looking very pitiful. Ning Shu closed his eyes. Since he didn't want to talk about it, then forget it. President, my younger brother got into a car accident and now he needs surgery fees. I only know rich people like you. Please lend me 500,000 yuan. I'll pay you back, An said with tears in her eyes. Ning Shu was speechless. As expected, this was the plot. Why did An think that he would lend her money and look for her first? It was completely subconscious. This was the plot. Ning Shu crossed his legs and indifferently said, why should I lend you money? We're not familiar enough to lend money to each other. We can't even be considered friends. Yes, but I really have no other choice. I can only beg you. An also had no other choice. Where could she get 500,000 yuan now? Without 500,000 yuan, what should she do? Her brother was dead. Her brother was waiting on the operating table, waiting for the money to save his life. President, I'll definitely pay you back. Even if I have to sweep the floor for the rest of my life, I'm willing. I beg you, I don't want my salary anymore. I beg you. An kept kowtowing to Ning Shu. Ning Shu took a deep breath and said, since you're borrowing money, you should have some kind of guarantee. There's a bank you can borrow money from. Why do you have to borrow from me? An said, I thought of using the house as a mortgage, but 500,000 yuan is not a small amount. It'll take a long time to verify it. My brother needs the money urgently to save his life. Is it serious? Ning Shu asked. An wiped her tears. He's unconscious now. He's waiting for the money to save his life. I'll do anything you want me to do. I beg you, President, I beg you. Anwan's face was red from crying. She looked very pitiful. Ning Shu thought about it and wrote a check for 500,000 yuan to An. An wiped her tears, crying and laughing at the same time. Ning Shu kowtowed. Thank you, thank you. Wait a minute. Since you're borrowing money, you should write an IOU. My money doesn't grow on trees. Ning Shu said lightly. An quickly said, I'll write the IOU right away. An wrote the IOU while crying. Ning Shu looked at the IOU and handed the check to An. An kowtowed to Ning Shu again. Her hand holding the check was trembling. Because she had been kneeling for too long, she staggered when she got up and almost fell into Ning Shu's arms. Ning Shu turned around and avoided her. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. An quickly apologized. Her face was red from embarrassment. Ning Shu waved for her to leave. An hurried out of the office. Ning Shu looked at the check and sneered. It wasn't that she was being kind. In order to connect her to An, the plot actually caused An's brother to get into a car accident. Now, she was An's creditor. She was really unscrupulous. The whole world was serving Gong Luo and An's relationship, causing misunderstandings between them or elevating their feelings. Everyone was the foundation of their relationship. The heavens were heartless and treated all living things like straw dogs. It was really too extreme. The money in his hands could save lives, so be it. Besides, Ning Shu didn't want to use this IOU to threaten An. Ning Shu rubbed his forehead. Perhaps it was because he had stayed in the hospital for too long and had seen too many struggles. Ning Shu still couldn't stand by and do nothing. Ning Shu slapped himself in the face. Who asked you to pretend to be a Virgin Mary? After Song Ning recovered, she went back to work as if nothing had happened. She helped Ning Shu deal with things and didn't flirt with Ning Shu anymore. She looked like she was doing business. Seeing Song Ning like this, Ning Shu breathed a sigh of relief. He felt that this was pretty good. Perhaps the original owner would come back and see such a good fiancé. Maybe they would have a good marriage. As long as he didn't flirt with her. An took 550,000 yuan to save her brother. When she came to work, she quickly bowed to Ning Shu and kept saying, CEO, thank you, thank you. Remember to return me the 500,000 yuan, Ning Shu said coldly. An pouted and said, I know. I'll work hard and return the 500,000 yuan to you as soon as possible. After An left, Song Ning couldn't help but ask Ning Shu, why did you suddenly lend her money? Song Ning raised her eyebrows. Don't tell me she sold herself to you for 500,000 yuan. Ning Shu was speechless. Is she really worth that much? Song Ning looked at him with disdain. So you like this kind of thing? Song Ning sighed. I don't know why you don't like me. Maybe I'm not as pure as An. No, I think you're better than An. Ning Shu admired capable women. Capable women could survive no matter where they were and didn't need men to save and protect them like gods. Song Ning rolled her eyes. Since I'm good, why don't you like me? Ning Shu was speechless. Chapter 420. Ning Shu was annoyed that Song Ning kept asking him why he didn't love her. Why should I love you? I'm a woman. Should I flirt with Gong Luo when he comes back? Now, she just wanted to complete the mission and leave this world. 2333 was dead. No matter how he called, there was no response. Ning Shu was afraid that he wouldn't be able to go back if he stayed here. And it was the feeling of being a man for the rest of his life. Song Ning saw that Ning Shu's expression wasn't good. She shrugged and said, forget it, I won't say any more. If I say more, you'll be annoyed and think I'm forcing you. Song Ning left the office, but her back looked sad. Ning Shu wiped his face and went back to work. After work, An walked to Ning Shu's office. She wasn't wearing a baggy cleaning uniform, but a skirt. The contrast was stunning. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at An. "What's the matter?" An looked hesitant. Finally, she said, "Well, as a reward, I want to treat you to a meal. Please give me a chance to thank you." Ning Shu rejected her directly. "No need. Just return the money to me as soon as possible. Do capitalists only see money in your eyes? Money is one thing, my gratitude is another. Please, let me treat you to a meal as a thank you." An rubbed her hands and begged Ning Shu. Ning Shu rejected her flatly. He was determined not to be in the same frame as the female lead. Something might have happened again. No, it was too dangerous. An saw that Ning Shu had rejected her request without hesitation, and her eyes were filled with confusion. She asked, "Why? You lent me the money and saved my brother. I must express my gratitude, and I'm doing this to apologize." "Apologize?" Ning Shu asked in surprise. An nodded. "I used to think that you were a bad person, but now I realize that you're a good person. When I was in danger, you still lent me money. I apologize." Ning Shu waved his hand. "No need." Song Ning walked over and held on to Ning Shu's arm. She glanced at An and said, "Since she's really grateful, why don't we go? She lent us 500,000 yuan. It's only right that we treat her to a meal." Ning Shu was speechless. "Fuck, what is this guy doing?" An saw Song Ning holding Ning Shu's arm, and a strange feeling arose in her heart. It was as if half of something had been taken away from her. This feeling was too strange. An shook her head to suppress it. Ning Shu asked, "Did you agree?" He agreed, "But I'm going too. You won't mind, right?" Song Ning tilted her head and leaned against Ning Shu's arm. She minded, of course she minded. An didn't know why she minded it so much. She was treating the president to a meal, so why did Song Ning have to follow? But when she thought of the relationship between them, An felt very awkward and helpless. "I don't mind. Miss Song, come with us," An said. Ning Shu didn't expect An to treat them to a high-class restaurant. Did An have the money to treat them to a meal at a place like this? She didn't even have enough money to pay for the surgery, and now she wanted to treat them to a meal here. When they were ordering, Song Ning deliberately ordered the most expensive meal. Ning Shu clearly saw Anwan's face twitch. It was obvious that Song Ning's order was beyond Anwan's tolerance. But An was stubbornly holding on. She was a little embarrassed. Ning Shu ordered a relatively cheap meal. Seeing that Ning Shu's meal was much cheaper than Song Ning's, Anwan's eyes flashed. Ning Shu asked, "President, is this all you're eating? Do you want to order a little more?" "I'm not hungry," Ning Shu said indifferently. He looked very cold and unapproachable. An nodded and ordered the cheapest meal. After all, she had a debt of $500,000. To be able to treat them to a meal at a place like this, An had mentally prepared herself for a long time. Song Ning looked at Ning Shu's actions. She moved closer to Ning Shu's ear and whispered, "You're so considerate. You're always thinking of saving money for An." Ning Shu felt his ear itch. Song Ning's hot breath was on his ear. It was very itchy. Song Ning saw Ning Shu's ears twitch. Her ears were turning pink at a speed visible to the naked eye. She suddenly burst out laughing. "You're so cute." Ning Shu pushed Song Ning away. He unbuttoned his suit and opened his jacket. He could feel the fine hairs on his back. An looked at their actions and felt that she was a big light bulb. It was indescribably awkward. The steak was served. Song Ning pushed the plate in front of Ning Shu. "Help me cut it." Ning Shu really wanted to ask why. Was her hand lame? Song Ning looked at Ning Shu with pitiful eyes. She reached out her slender and fair hand. Look at my hand. It hurts. I can't even cut the steak now. Ning Shu was speechless. I'm working for you. If you have any conscience, you should cut it for me. Song Ning smiled and looked at Ning Shu. Song Ning was like a shameless child now. She was acting shamelessly, but she was also cute and playful. Damn it. If he asked her to cut it, then cut it. He was flirting with her again. She would die if she didn't flirt with him. Ning Shu cut the steak for Song Ning. Only then did Song Ning smile in satisfaction. Seeing An in a daze, she said calmly, "Do you want Gong Luo to cut the steak for you too?" "No need, no need." An quickly waved her hand. "I don't want to trouble you, CEO." An thought for a moment and raised her glass of red wine. Ning Shu proposed a toast. She said shyly, "Thank you, CEO, for lending me 500,000. Otherwise, my brother's name would have been lost. I propose a toast to you." "Thank you." Ning Shu nodded. He raised his glass and clinked it with Anwan's. He took a sip and put it down. Anwan looked at Ning Shu's indifference and felt a little scared. She didn't say anything and buried her head in the steak. Song Ning's expression said, "I'm not happy. Come and coax me." Ning Shu looked straight ahead and focused on eating. Song Ning felt wronged and kept drinking. Ning Shu couldn't help but say, "Can you drink less?" "No, I'm not anyone to you. Why do you care?" Song Ning pouted and threw a tantrum. Ning Shu frowned helplessly. A woman was acting coquettishly with him. This feeling was really weird. When An saw this scene, she felt even more awkward. She couldn't sit still. The two people in front of her were engaged. The man was handsome, and the woman was beautiful. They were a perfect match. They were a perfect match. They were the envy of others. But why did she feel disappointed? Could it be, An looked at the cold Ning Shu. Could it be that she had feelings for this cold, heartless, and sharp-tongued man? Impossible, impossible. She didn't like this kind of man. She liked men who were gentle to her and could tolerate her. She didn't like this man who was picky. An, you can't have water in your brain. Chapter 421. Ning Shu watched as Song Ning gulped down the alcohol and looked aggrieved. After a while, her face turned red, and even her eyes started to blur. It was obvious that she drank too much. More than half of the red wine on the table was gone. Seeing that Song Ning still wanted to drink, Ning Shu reached out and took Song Ning's glass. "Stop drinking." Song Ning chuckled at Ning Shu, then picked up the bottle and gulped it down. She didn't know if she was angry at herself or at Ning Shu. Ning Shu watched as Song Ning downed the entire bottle of wine. Then, she laid on the table and did not move. She was dead drunk. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu said to An, "I have to go first. Song Ning is drunk." "It's okay. Take Miss Song away first," An said quickly. Ning Shu nodded and helped An out of the restaurant. An looked at their backs and saw that they hadn't touched their plates much. For some reason, Anwan's heart was filled with an unknown bitterness and grievance. She seriously wanted to treat them to a meal, but this was the result. An clutched her chest, feeling terrible. Ning Shu stuffed the drunken An into the car, fastened her seatbelt, and drove back to the villa. After getting out of the car, Song Ning vomited for a while, then leaned on Ning Shu. Ning Shu said aggrievedly, "Gong Luo, I feel terrible." "Don't you know to drink less if you feel terrible?" Ning Shu said angrily and poured a glass of water for Song Ning. Song Ning was sleeping on the sofa. Ning Shu walked over and pushed her. Get up and drink some water. Song Ning sat up shakily and drank the water in the glass. She turned to look at Ning Shu, then pounced on Ning Shu and pressed Ning Shu onto the sofa. She said with tears, I hate it when you're with Nguyen. I hate it very, very much. Song Ning's tears dripped onto Ning Shu's face, making Ning Shu feel hot. His heart spasmed uncontrollably, and his heartbeat sped up. The blood in his body seemed to have become restless. Ning Shu furrowed his brows and chanted, Amitba, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Coupled with the effect of the calm halo, Ning Shu's agitated heart calmed down. Ning Shu pushed Song Ning away and straightened his clothes. You drank too much. I did drink too much, but I know very well in my heart. Song Ning grabbed Ning Shu's hand and pressed it against her heart. Gong Luo, I like you so much that my heart hurts. Ning Shu felt the soft thing in his hand, and his heart was filled with grief and indignation. Fuck, so what if you have big breasts? When I was the female lead, I was also a big-breasted girl. He was so jealous. Ning Shu pulled his hand back and said, wash up and sleep. You'll feel better after a good night's sleep. Song Ning was so angry at Ning Shu that she was about to cry. She suddenly burst into tears, and her cries were filled with grief and indignation. Ning Shu looked at Song Ning's crying. It was simply disturbing. Don't cry. What's there to cry about? Ning Shu said. Song Ning's face was contorted with anger. She grabbed Ning Shu's collar and roared, you don't even like me, and you don't allow me to cry. I want to cry. What can you do about it? Ning Shu tilted his head, not wanting to smell the alcohol on Song Ning's body. Don't act like a drunkard. I'm not acting like a drunkard. My mind is clear. Song Ning started to take Ning Shu's collar. Since I can't get your heart, I'll get your body. That way, I won't lose out. Ning Shu was speechless. What the fuck? Ning Shu quickly protected his body. She was going to fucking force herself on him. She even wanted to fucking get his body. How scary. Ning Shu pushed Song Ning away forcefully. Song Ning stumbled and almost fell to the ground. She didn't know how to react for a moment. Then, she became very angry. She staggered over and reached out her hand to pull off Ning Shu's pants. I want to see if you're a man. How can you do this? Ning Shu was speechless. What the fuck? I'm scared. Enough. When are you going to stop acting like a drunkard? Ning Shu said sternly with a cold face. Song Ning lowered her head. Her eyes, which were supposed to be in a daze, flashed with fierceness and hatred. When she raised her head again, her eyes were hazy. She looked like she didn't know what was going on. Ning Shu asked Auntie Li to give Song Ning a bath. Then, he went upstairs to rest. His whole body was covered in sweat. After a quick bath, Ning Shu lay on the bed, exhausted. Auntie Li's voice sounded outside the door. Sir, I can't control Miss Song. She refuses to take a bath and sleep. Ning Shu was speechless. Fuck. He had never felt that women were so troublesome. When he was a woman, he didn't feel that women were troublesome at all. But as a man, he felt that women were so troublesome. Ning Shu went downstairs and saw Song Ning fumbling around for alcohol. Ning Shu stood in front of Song Ning. Song Ning narrowed her eyes. She didn't seem to see Ning Shu. Her hands were touching her body. It was as if her hands were magical. Wherever Song Ning touched, her skin would burn. Small flames would ignite in her body, making her blood boil. Then, fucking, Ning Shu had a reaction. Ning Shu looked down at his crotch. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to die. Why did he have to transmigrate as a man? Why? Why? It was such an embarrassing thing. Ever since he transmigrated as a man, Ning Shu had become a cat that kept an eye on his crotch. He kept looking down at his crotch, afraid that something embarrassing would happen. For example, it would suddenly protrude out of his control. Ning Shu, I choose dog leading. Ning Shu grabbed Song Ning's hand that was fumbling around his body. He pulled Song Ning's hand and walked towards the door. Song Ning asked with a blank face, "Where are you taking me? I can't rest with you making such a fuss." "I'm taking you home," Ning Shu said matter-of-factly. Song Ning's face was extremely stiff. She looked at Ning Shu and complained, "I've never seen such a cold-hearted person like you. I feel terrible. You actually want to send me away. You're bringing me around in the middle of the night. Gong Luo, you're heartless." Ning Shu was speechless. Fuck, what should he do when he suddenly realized that he was such a jerk? Then stop making a fuss. Have a good bath and rest. Making such a fuss makes everyone uncomfortable, Ning Shu said calmly. Song Ning hummed in grievance. She lowered her head and her hair covered her face. She looked extremely lonely and innocent. She looked really pitiful. Song Ning reached out her hand and grabbed Ning Shu's fingers. She looked up at him. "Why can't you try to accept me? All I want is to be with you. Ning Shu, I like you." Song Ning said as she wrapped her arms around Ning Shu's waist. She leaned her head on Ning Shu's chest. "Don't push me away. Let me hug you for a while. This might be the last time I'll be in your embrace." When Ning Shu heard this, he did not hesitate to push Song Ning away. Song Ning was dumbfounded. Clearly, she was surprised by Ning Shu's actions. That was not the plan, all right. Chapter 422. After being rejected by a man over and over again, Song Ning felt a little embarrassed. Furthermore, beautiful women were all prideful. Song Ning felt that she had already shamelessly pursued Gong Luo, but he still rejected her. It was really annoying. She wanted to just walk away, but there was a stubborn feeling in her heart. She had to fucking take down this abstinent man. Ning Shu looked at Song Ning and asked, "Do you want to go back?" Song Ning shook her head. "I'm dizzy. I'm going to sleep." Then, she went into the guest room. She could have just gone to sleep. What was all this fuss about? Ning Shu shook his head and looked at Song Ning. No matter how much she flirted with her, she wouldn't fall for Song Ning. Not to mention that she wasn't Gong Luo, she was a woman who liked another woman. Also, Ning Shu was very annoyed by this kind of love. Once he got involved, it was like falling into a swamp. No matter how much he struggled, it was useless. She couldn't love someone in her current situation. Perhaps when the dust settled, she would try to watch the clouds with someone. But not like now. Ning Shu realized that his current situation was the same as when he was lying in the hospital with a terminal illness. He didn't know what his future would be like. Perhaps he would die during a mission and disappear completely. Song Ning loved Gong Luo so deeply. He would wait for Gong Luo to come back. That night, Song Ning did not cause much trouble. However, when they woke up the next day, Song Ning's face was unbearable. Her face was as white as a sheet of paper. Even her lips were pale. She did not wear any makeup. She could not be more haggard. Ning Shu looked at Song Ning and asked, "You don't look too good. Do you want to go to the hospital?" Song Ning waved her hand. "No need. I can take it." Could he hold on with this expression? But the body belonged to Song Ning. If Song Ning said she could take it, then it was fine. Ning Shu didn't want to be overly concerned about Song Ning. He didn't want their relationship to progress any further. Otherwise, Song Ning would force herself on him again. Ning Shu sat opposite Song Ning. He saw her sipping her milk as if she was going to vomit if she drank too much. Did drinking too much alcohol have such a big side effect? She looked so haggard that anyone who saw her would feel sorry for her. You shouldn't go to work. You don't look good, Ning Shu said to Song Ning. Song Ning looked at Ning Shu indifferently. Can I take that as you being concerned about me? Don't worry about me. Just pretend you didn't see anything. You're making my resolute heart waver again, Song Ning said coldly. Ning Shu nodded. I'll pretend I didn't see it next time. Song Ning really wanted to pick up the plate and press it against the man's face. She wanted to smear the sandwich all over his face. She had never seen such a man before. Song Ning's face turned even paler. She was so pale that she looked almost transparent. Ning Shu couldn't help but ask, "Are you really okay?" "I'm fine," Song Ning said through gritted teeth. After Ning Shu finished his breakfast, he went to work. After all, there was so much work waiting for him every day. He really admired Gong Luo's ability. He dated N1 every day, yet the company didn't collapse. There was a lot of work. Song Ning watched as Ning Shu left. She was so angry that she stomped her feet. He left just like that. He left just like that. She felt so uncomfortable and he left just like that. Damn, this man didn't play by the rules. She felt like she had been played. Song Ning scratched her head in frustration and bit her lip. It looked like she had to prepare for an escape route. When Ning Shu arrived at the company, he bumped into N1. Ning Shu pretended not to see N1 and walked past her. N1 thought she wanted to greet him, but he ignored her and walked past her. It was so awkward and uncomfortable. CEO, wait. N1 quickly caught up with Ning Shu and stood in front of Ning Shu. Seeing Ning Shu's cold expression and the way he looked at her was cold and indifferent, she swallowed her words. She didn't know what to say. The atmosphere was a little tense. Ning Shu asked, "What's the matter?" N1 asked, "Is Miss Song okay? She drank so much yesterday." "She's fine." Ning Shu walked around N1 and left. This man was too cold and cold-blooded. It was unbearable. His heart was bitter. Ning Shu felt like he was sandwiched between N1 and Song Ning. He took turns to show his presence in front of her, not caring whether she could take it or not. Ning Shu wiped his face. This mission was really a trap. How was he supposed to get rid of N1? Ning Shu believed that even without him, N1, this girl who was doted on by the heavens, would still have a good life. The problem was that the plot wanted to forcefully tie them together. If he chased N1 away, who knew what the plot would do? It was too annoying. "CEO, the CEO of Ding Feng Company is here to visit you," the secretary said. "It's about the cooperation proposal. Let him in." Ning Shu stood up. Zhong Jingbin walked in a casual suit. Zhong Jingbin's face was handsome, but he had a pair of foxy eyes. He looked like a playboy, giving off a frivolous vibe. Zhong Jingbin was the second male lead. Under his flirtatious appearance was his deep love for the female lead. Although he didn't know what was wrong with Zhong Jingbin's eyes, to fall for the married N1, he had no choice but to like N1. When Ning Shu saw Zhong Jingbin, his eyes lit up. He might as well let the second male lead, who looked flirtatious on the outside and had deep love on the inside, take over. He really wanted to wipe his face. What was he doing? Not only did he have to break up the couple, but he also had to be a matchmaker. He even had to push the original owner's wife to someone else. Damn, he didn't know what to say. Ning Shu didn't expect to get a lot of points for this mission. To be able to leave this world, Ning Shu was already very grateful. He had some doubts in his heart. Without N1, perhaps the plot would arrange for another girl to appear in front of Gong Luo, and the plot would keep repeating. Ning Shu shook his head. He only needed to mess up the story of An and Gong Luo. As for the other things, he had to leave it to the original owner. Zhong Jingbin reached out and shook hands with Ning Shu. He smiled and said, CEO Gong, how have you been? Hello. Ning Shu said coldly and invited Zhong Jingbin to sit down. Ning Shu still wanted to say something, but the office door suddenly opened. An walked in with a mop and a bucket. Ning Shu was speechless. An saw that Ning Shu had a guest and quickly apologized. I'm sorry, CEO. I'll go out immediately. Wait a minute. Make 2 cups of coffee. Ning Shu said to An. An was a little surprised, but she still did as she was told. Ning Shu saw Zhong Jingbin's foxy eyes light up, and his gaze followed An. Could it be that the two of them had already met? And looking at Zhong Jingbin, he should be interested in An. Chapter 423. When Zhong Jingbin was talking to Ning Shu, he was distracted and kept looking out the door. Ning Shu didn't say anything. Something must have happened between the two of them that she didn't know about. After a while, An came in with a cup of coffee. However, it looked a little ugly in her cleaning uniform. An lowered her head and looked straight ahead as she placed the coffee in front of Ning Shu and Zhong Jingbin. Zhong Jingbin looked at An with a smile and suddenly laughed. The world is really small. An turned and saw Zhong Jingbin. Her eyes widened and her face flushed red. Why are you here? An hugged the tray and looked at Zhong Jingbin warily. Why are you here, you big pervert? Pervert? Ning Shu's gaze lingered between An and Zhong Jingbin. Did something happen between the two of them? Get lost? Get lost? Perhaps because Ning Shu's gaze was too lustful, Anwan's face turned from red to purple. She looked at Zhong Jingbin angrily. Zhong Jingbin touched his thin lips and said flirtatiously, it tastes good. Ning Shu was speechless. He really got lost. Could it be that the plot had changed? You're shameless. Don't say it again. If it weren't for the fact that the CEO was still around, An really wanted to tear this sly fox's mouth apart. Zhong Jingbin smiled and looked at An who was hopping mad. Ning Shu was speechless. Damn it, did he get lost? Ning Shu's heart was extremely irritable, but her face remained expressionless as she silently watched the explosive interaction between Zhong Jingbin and An. Zhong Jingbin lifted Anwan's hair and sniffed it. An immediately snatched her hair back and glared at Zhong Jingbin. Zhong Jingbin looked at Anwan's lips. You're looking at me like that. Do you want me to kiss you? Get lost. An was so frightened that she took a step back. Zhong Jingbin laughed out loud. When An took a step back, he took a step forward. An was so angry that her face turned red and her eyes were filled with fear. Ning Shu looked at Zhong Jingbin flirting with the girl with a cold expression. Why don't you tell me, did you scram or not? You may leave. Ning Shu waved his hand at An, and An immediately felt as if she had been granted amnesty. She hurriedly ran out of the office. Zhong Jingbin still wanted to hold on to An, but An ran very quickly. Zhong Jingbin shrugged his shoulders and couldn't help but laugh out loud. His expression was somewhat doting. Seeing Ning Shu staring at him, Zhong Jingbin chuckled and sat down. Ning Shu said, the employees in your company are very interesting. Zhong Jingbin said as he took a sip of the coffee. She's a little stubborn. TSK, this coffee doesn't taste good. Ning Shu said indifferently, we're still talking about the cooperation. She's just a cleaner. Zhong Jingbin shook his head. How can I let such an interesting girl sweep the floor? Isn't this something that should be done by aunties? Gong Luo, you didn't do this very well. Why don't you let this girl come to my company and be a secretary? It'll be good to tease her when I have nothing to do. Ning Shu was speechless. She owes me 500,000. Give me 500,000 first, then take her away. Ning Shu said indifferently. 500,000. Zhong Jingbin suddenly frowned. What's the relationship between the two of you? Nothing at all. It's just that my younger brother is sick, and then he wants to borrow money from me. Ning Shu said indifferently. Zhong Jingbin suddenly laughed as if he had heard a big joke. You borrow money to do good deeds. The vampire Gong Luo actually has such thoughts. We're talking about cooperation, let's not talk about this. Ning Shu's expression was indifferent, making it impossible for others to read his emotions. Zhong Jingbin's expression was a little bad. Ning Shu said directly, I'm a little interested in this girl. If she's your mistress, then just say it. I don't want to be melodramatic and fight over a woman with you. Song Ning has always been spying on the company. How could she have a mistress? Ning Shu's lips curled up. If you want An to come to your company, you can tell her yourself. An. Is her name An? Zhong Jingbin touched his chin and recalled the name like an idiot. His peach blossom eyes were shining. Ning Shu was speechless. After all this time, he didn't even know her name. Zhong Jingbin raised his wrist to look at his watch and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I still have something to do. Let's talk next time, okay? Ning Shu didn't say anything. Zhong Jingbin tidied his hair and then left the office. Ning Shu felt that this guy must have gone to flirt with An again. He suddenly saw the light of victory. It would be good if An and Zhong Jingbin got together. It seemed like Zhong Jingbin was very interested in An. It was probably because he hadn't made any progress with An for a long time, so the second male lead came online early. It was a good thing that he came online early. An didn't have any substantial relationship with her now. Zhong Jingbin and An were both unmarried, so they might be able to become a couple. Ning Shu wiped his face. Why were her missions getting weirder and weirder? Just as he was thinking about this, An suddenly rushed into the office angrily. She stood in front of Ning Shu with her fists clenched. Her face was red, and her expression was stubborn. Ning Shu's face turned cold. Get out, what rules do you have? Anwan's eyes were red, and her body was trembling. Ning Shu asked, why did you do this? What did I do? Ning Shu frowned and said indifferently. An cried and said, you sold me to that man just for 500,000 yuan. How could you do this? I'm a human being, not a commodity. I have my dignity too. You've gone too far. An looked as if she had been greatly insulted. She wiped her tears and spoke to Ning Shu hatefully. Ning Shu, what did I do? An was really wronged. She had already trampled her dignity to the ground. She borrowed 500,000 yuan from Gong Luo, but she didn't expect that Gong Luo would sell her to that fox-like man for 500,000 yuan. Especially when that man said with a smile that she was his after he paid off the 500,000 yuan for her. An hated this man. He was obviously a playboy. Last night when she treated the CEO and Miss Song to dinner, she met this man when she was paying the bill. In order to avoid being chased by several women, this playboy directly pulled An, pressed her against the wall, and kissed her. An was so angry that she gave Zhong Jingbin a slap and ran away angrily. But she didn't expect that this man would appear in the company and say that he wanted to buy her for 500,000 yuan. An didn't even need to think to know that this man wanted to take revenge on her for hitting him last night. An was more hurt by the CEO's attitude. When the CEO lent her money before, she thought that the CEO was a kind person who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. It wasn't like she didn't want to repay the 500,000 yuan. Why did he sell her to that man in such a way? She knew that the man didn't have good intentions. Thinking of this, Anwan's tears fell again. She felt very wronged. Chapter 424. Ning Shu heard Anwan's accusation and saw Anwan's aggrieved expression that said, "You pushed me into the fire pit." Ning Shu felt helpless. Ning Shu rubbed his forehead. "Zhong Jingbin wants to poach you. Since he wants to poach you, shouldn't you give him 500,000 yuan? It was a fact that Anwan borrowed money. How could he send Anwan away happily without taking the money? But you're selling me to that man by doing this," Anwan said as she cried. Ning Shu, Flip's table, they couldn't have a better conversation. Why did Anwan feel that he was selling her? Ning Shu expressed that he couldn't understand this thought. "I only told Zhong Jingbin that you owe me 500,000 yuan. He poached you to be his secretary. He should know that you owe him 500,000 yuan, Ning Shu said indifferently. Anwan said as she cried, "But I have my dignity. Did you consider my feelings when you did this? I'll return the 500,000 yuan to you myself. I don't need that man to pay for me. It's up to you. No matter who pays, I'm a businessman. I only have money in my eyes." Ning Shu waved at Anwan. "Get out. If you barge into my office so unruly again, you can just pack up and leave." Anwan's tears fell. She felt terrible. Ning Shu said, "I originally thought that you were a good person. I really misjudged you. You only have money in your heart. What can you do with money? Not everything can be bought with money." Ning Shu looked at Anwan and sneered. "Your brother's life was bought with money. Didn't you beg me for money too? What kind of mentality did she have to suffer for money and then despise money and rich people? Did this make her seem virtuous?" Ha ha ha. He felt that Anwan's thoughts were really capricious. She did whatever she wanted. When Anwan heard Ning Shu's words and how pitiful she was for money, she felt as if her self-esteem had been sliced into pieces. Especially when the person in front of her was her creditor. Anwan was ashamed and angry. Could it be that she wanted to put down her dignity and beg for help? If she wasn't forced to do so, who would put their dignity on the ground and let others trample on it? What Anwan couldn't stand the most was Ning Shu's attitude, which made her feel very embarrassed. "I'll return the money to you. Although you're my creditor, it doesn't mean that you can decide my life at will." Anwan wiped her tears with the back of her hand and turned to leave the office. Ning Shu shrugged. He had no idea what Anwan meant. Decide Anwan's life? She only cared about Anwan because she had eaten too much. Furthermore, Ning Shu could not understand Anwan's anger at all. He had no idea what Anwan was angry about. He kept saying that he had sold her out. Why was it so difficult to communicate with him? How could a debtor become a lord? Ning Shu rubbed her face hard. She was so frustrated that she wanted to die. Whenever something like this happened, every time Anwan saw Ning Shu, she would put on a cold face and ignore Ning Shu. Even if she met him normally, she wouldn't greet him. She would just snort coldly and brush past Ning Shu. Ning Shu was baffled. Could it be that Anwan's lack of basic greetings to her superior was a sign of her dignity? Ning Shu sneered. Of course, a person who was favored by the heavens naturally didn't need to consider this problem. She would live a better and more comfortable life than others. Others had to struggle to survive, but these people could live in their own world and do whatever they wanted. It was no wonder that there were always people who were so jealous that they turned evil. He was lucky that he didn't gain anything, but some people could be so lucky. Anwan was completely an ingrate now. Instead, she kept saying that others were trampling on her dignity. Ning Shu only wanted Zhong Jingbin to get rid of Anwan quickly. Every time he saw her, he felt frustrated. Zhong Jingbin always came to the Miyagi group with the excuse that he was there to talk about work. But in the end, he always went to flirt with Anwan, often making her angry. Anyone could tell that Zhong Jingbin was interested in N1, but N1 always felt that Zhong Jingbin was here to take revenge on her. She was very slow. Zhong Jingbin liked this N1 very much. The two of them bickered and quarreled like quarrelsome lovers. Ning Shu watched all of this silently and didn't say anything. Ning Shu felt that he had lost the right to be the male lead because he wasn't qualified. He didn't treat the female lead well and even trampled on the female lead's dignity. He borrowed money and asked the female lead to return it. It was simply disgraceful. And now, Zhong Jingbin felt like he was going to be promoted. Which female lead would return money to the male lead? Regarding this, Ning Shu's face was cold, but his heart was throwing flowers. Song Ning, on the other hand, felt that something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The two of them were supposed to be in love. Why were they in such a situation now? Didn't Gong Luo dote on N1 a lot? He was afraid of spoiling her when he kept her in his mouth and afraid of dropping her when he held her in his hands. Could it be that her role had caused Gong Luo and N1's marriage to break? But Song Ning clearly felt that Gong Luo didn't fall in love with her, and his affection for her was always at 0. It had never changed. It was a solid 0. In such a situation, the one who was wrong was Gong Luo. What was wrong with Gong Luo? Song Ning observed Ning Shu from head to toe, trying to find out what was wrong. But after observing for a while, Song Ning couldn't find anything wrong. He was similar to the Gong Luo in the storyline, cold and aloof. But why was Gong Luo indifferent to N1? Could it be that N1's heart had changed and she ran off to be with the supporting male lead? Fuck, what was going on? Why did it suddenly become so complicated? But the current situation was clearly in her favor. It was better that N1 wasn't by Gong Luo's side. Ning Shu had long noticed that Song Ning was looking at him with suspicion and vigilance. This made Ning Shu wary. What was Song Ning thinking? Could it be that she wanted to get him into bed? Song Ning probed, Gong Luo, N1 is going to run off with someone else. Ning Shu looked at Song Ning and was very wary. He said, she and Zhong Jingbin are just friends. What friends? Why would friends be so ambiguous? I even saw them hugging and kissing. Song Ning pursed her lips and pressed her finger against her lips. You and I are engaged, but I've never kissed you. Are they friends? Ning Shu narrowed his eyes and looked at N1. Why are you so concerned about N1? She's just an ordinary employee. You're paying too much attention to her. Song Ning's expression was a little unnatural. She said with some grievance, I'm just wary of her. You didn't even blink when you lent her 500,000. It's normal for me to suspect that there's something going on between the two of you. Was Song Ning taking the straightforward route recently? She really said whatever was on her mind. Ning Shu didn't know how to continue the conversation. However, Ning Shu started to suspect Song Ning in his heart. Song Ning let out a long breath and patted her chest. Her breasts rippled and were very eye-catching. As long as you don't like N1. N1's face was filled with relief. Ning Shu looked at Song Ning's chest and then looked away. So what if she had big breasts? He asked, why should I like N1? Chapter 425. Ning Shu never understood Song Ning. Why did Song Ning think that he should like N1? Or did Song Ning know the plot? Was Song Ning a transmigrator? A reincarnator or a mission enforcer? If she was a reincarnator, she should be jealous of N1. However, Song Ning's attitude towards N1 was always high and mighty. Sometimes, she even looked down on her. She was most likely a mission enforcer like him. When Ning Shu thought of this possibility, the hairs on his body stood up. He felt that this bitch might really be a mission enforcer. She kept teasing him. Ning Shu's mind flashed with all kinds of thoughts, but his face was expressionless. He asked Song Ning, why should I like N1? Song Ning pursed her lips and said, don't you guys like this kind of pure and innocent girl? No, I like people like you. Ning Shu grinned. Looking at his smiling face, Song Ning really wanted to give this man a big slap. Although he said he liked her, he should at least give her a better impression of him. Fuck, it would always be a 0. Song Ning was so angry that she wanted to cry. She had never seen such a hooligan. An and Zhong Zhengbin's relationship developed rapidly. Not long after, Ning Shu saw the two of them acting intimately. An was often teased until her face turned red. He would either suddenly kiss her or hug her. An would faint from the smell. Zhong Zhengbin's flirting skills were simply through the roof, and the interaction between the two of them was incredibly sweet. The entire Miyagi Corporation was filled with the sour taste of love. Ning Shu, a single dog, silently ate a few pounds of PDA. Look, even without Gong Luo's love, there were other men who loved An Wan. An Wan was born to be loved. In comparison, they were both women. Ning Shu even began to doubt his own life. Forget it, he was destined to work hard. On this day, Zhong Zhengbin brought An Wan to Ning Shu. He directly said to Ning Shu, CEO Gong, you have to let her go. I'm taking An Wan away. Ning Shu looked at An Wan. Her face was rosy and she looked energetic. An Wan, who was nourished by love, was very beautiful. It was just that she had kept talking about her dignity and accused her of selling her to Zhong Zhengbin. Not long after, she slapped herself in the face and left with Zhong Zhengbin. Ning Shu's expression was indifferent as he said, sure, just give me 600,000. CEO, I borrowed 500,000 yuan. Why did it suddenly become 600,000 yuan? An Wan was instantly displeased when she heard that it was 600,000 yuan. She felt that Ning Shu was deliberately raising the price. Ning Shu ignored An Wan and said to Zhong Zhengbin, this cleaner broke a vase before. 100,000 is the compensation for the vase. An Wan covered her mouth in shock. She looked at Ning Shu even more indignantly. What vase is worth 100,000 yuan? How can you do this? You're blackmailing me on purpose. How can you do this? I'm an antique vase. This price is already very cheap. Ning Shu said indifferently. It's just so much money. What can you do to me? An Wan frowned and said to Zhong Zhengbin, I think we should just forget about it. Ning Shu said in surprise, what do you mean forget about it? You owe me money. Now you're returning the money, not buying anything. How can we forget about it? An Wan was immediately embarrassed. Why did the CEO have to talk about money, especially in front of Zhong Zhengbin? She previously thought that the CEO was a good person, but now it seemed that he was still a cold-blooded capitalist. Zhong Zhengbin saw his woman's embarrassed look because of a mere 600,000 yuan. He very straightforwardly wrote a check for 600,000 yuan to Ning Shu. This is 600,000 yuan. From today onwards, An Wan is no longer an employee of your company. Ning Shu didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but the current scene was like a prince defeating an evil dragon and saving a beautiful princess. She inexplicably became the villain. Ning Shu took the check and said to An Wan, go to the finance department to get your salary. You're no longer an employee of the Gong Corporation. However, An Wan seemed to have been insulted. I don't want your money. She then pulled Zhong Zhengbin away. Zhong Zhengbin shook his head and left with An Wan with a doting look on his face. Ning Shu, although it was strange, Ning Shu felt relieved. Now that An Wan had nothing to do with him, he would let Zhong Zhengbin pamper An Wan. Ning Shu could even feel the shackles on his body slowly dissipating. Ning Shu directly said to the head secretary, you don't have to work with Ding Feng Corporation for this project. Find other partners. With An Wan's temper, she definitely wouldn't let Zhong Xingbin work with a cold-blooded capitalist like him. In the plot, Gong Luo destroyed many companies for An Yuan. For example, when the heir of a certain company pursued An Yuan, Gong Luo immediately destroyed the company out of jealousy. He simply couldn't stop. Beneath An Yuan and Gong Luo's love was the blood and tears of many cannon fodder. Now go and have fun by yourselves. Sometimes, it was a disaster to provoke someone who wasn't clear-headed. Without An Yuan by his side, Ning Shu felt that the world was beautiful. He just didn't know when he would be able to leave this world. 2333, are you there? Haven't you died yet? Stop pretending to be dead. Ning Shu tried to communicate with the system, but 2333 still didn't make a sound. It was as if it had disappeared. If the system was a person, Ning Shu really wanted to beat it to death. Ning Shu was about to get off work when Song Ning walked over and held on to Ning Shu's arm. Seeing Ning Shu's reluctant expression, Song Ning brushed her hair and said, "No matter what, you're my fiancé. It's not wrong for me to declare my ownership to others, right?" Song Ning looked like a jealous lover. Ning Shu nodded. "Up to you." Song Ning's face stiffened. Damn it. Damn it. Song Ning felt like she was being tortured by this man. No matter what she did, this man was indifferent. His affection for her would never change. Actually, this man was a robot. Back at the villa, Ning Shu saw that Song Ning was familiar with the place and asked, "Aren't you going back?" Song Ning picked up a pillow. Ning Shu smiled and rolled his eyes. "I can stay as long as I want. If I get tired of you one day, I'll leave." Ning Shu nodded. He pulled off his tie and prepared to go upstairs to take a shower. "Gong Luo, I'm hungry. Cook for me," Ning Shu shouted. "I'm a guest. Do you want me to starve to death?" Ning Shu unbuttoned his shirt and said, "What do you want to eat?" "Tell Auntie Li knows how to cook." Song Ning pouted. "I just want to eat what you cook." "Forget it, let's not talk about it. You have a heart of stone. No matter how I treat you, you can't feel it. You should be alone for the rest of your life. Don't cry when I leave." Song Ning said fiercely, but her voice was soft. It didn't sound like a threat. Instead, it sounded like sweet coquettishness. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.